Belinda shook her head. She just curls up on the bed. Torak didn't wait another second. He turned and strode toward the house, temper already fraying. His patience had never been his strongest trait. He wanted to see Raine, and he wanted to see her now. Alpha! Belinda hurried after him, almost tripping over her own feet. Alpha, where are you going? You can't meet her yet. At that, Torak's anger flared. His eyes darkened to inky black, and when he spoke, his voice came out low and rough. I don't need your permission to see my mate, he growled. That's not what I meant. Alpha. Belinda lowered her head, trembling as fear crawled over her skin. This time, Torak didn't bother responding. He pushed forward into the house, mind locked on one person and one person only. Alpha. Belinda called again, but before she could follow, a hand landed gently on her shoulder, stopping her. Let him go, Raphael said. He had come to discuss the incident at the prison and the appearance of the succubus, but he'd walked straight into the middle of this. He needs this. Belinda shook her head, anxious. Raine isn't ready to see him yet. She'll be terrified in the Alpha's presence. Raphael watched Torak's back as he disappeared down the hallway, every step radiating purpose. Their bond is stronger than you think. It's not about their bond, it's about her fear, Belinda shot back stubbornly. No, you're wrong. That bond will make it easier on both of them. Raphael removed his hand when it became clear she wasn't going to run after Torak again. The middle-aged woman muttered under her breath. They've only known each other for weeks. How strong can their bond be? Raphael sighed softly. She might have whispered, but to a Lycan, every word was crystal clear. Strong enough to help Raine overcome her fear, he answered. Belinda wasn't a Lycan. She couldn't feel what a mate's bond truly was, so Raphael could understand why she was so against Torak pushing his way in. But for their kind, the mate bond was sacred, a gift from Selene, the moon goddess herself. Equals 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 equals. Belinda's house was filled with old, charming furniture and splashes of bright color. It was a two-story home untouched by modern trends, warm and a little cluttered, reflecting her personality perfectly. As Torak walked down the corridor, the scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air. But even that couldn't drown out the one smell that stood out above everything else. The scent of damp earth after the rain. The scent that belonged to his little mate. The scent that led him straight to a black wooden door. Torak stopped in front of it and slowly pushed it open. The hinges creaked, and the sound made the figure on the bed flinch. Raine moved quickly, yanking the blanket up and curling under it, hiding herself completely. She was on high alert, listening intently to the person at the doorway. She hadn't even tried to see who it was. Fear alone dictated her reaction. Torak's heart sank at the sight. He stayed where he was for a moment, eyes fixed on the small bundle of blankets huddled in the corner of the bed. On any other day, he might have found her attempt to hide like that endearing. But right now, she was worse than when he'd first met her. And he knew exactly why. It was because of him. Torak approached slowly, careful not to startle her, and sat on the very edge of the bed, as far from her as the mattress allowed. The dip of the bed under his weight would tell her he was there. My love, it's me. Torak's voice was low, threaded with exhaustion. I'll be honest with you. The blanket trembled slightly. She really was afraid of him. I'm sorry I lost control that time. But I don't regret what I did, he said quietly. He had promised himself he would speak openly to her, and that was what he was doing. If I could go back, I'd do the same thing again without hesitation. What I regret is that you had to see it. The room was still. Moonlight spilled in through the open window, washing over the powerful Alpha as if Selene herself was listening to his confession. I promised you I would do anything to protect you. Torak continued when she still didn't move. I will kill anyone who tries to hurt you, if that's what it takes to keep you safe. Torak didn't soften his words. He couldn't afford to. He didn't want to frighten Raine, but with the prophecy hanging over them, Sloth still lurking, and the succubus incident unresolved, he was almost sure their path ahead would be soaked in more blood than she had ever seen. She would have to face that reality. Pretty lies wouldn't help her when danger was already moving in the shadows. Even the drunk werewolf at the mansion was still a mystery. Their kind didn't get drunk easily, and the way his mate had died was still under investigation. Torak knew how fragile Raine had been at the beginning, how unstable her mental state was. That was exactly why it tore at him to push her like this. But if he truly wanted her to survive, he needed her to grow stronger, and he refused to lie to her. "The thought of hurting you would never cross my mind," he said quietly. "Even if I completely lost myself to my beast, he would still protect you." His eyes dulled, guilt hollowing him out from the inside. "But in the end, I still hurt you, one way or another. And I'm sorry for that." The weight of his regret settled in the room with his last words. Torak rose slowly and walked toward the door. He closed it with deliberate care, the latch clicking softly so it wouldn't startle her. After the sound faded, Raine lifted the edge of the blanket and peeked out, staring at the spot on the bed where he had been sitting moments ago. The emptiness hit her hard. He was a monster who had torn apart another werewolf right in front of her. The image burned behind her eyes. Blood everywhere, a headless body, the savage growl of a Lycan gone berserk. The same man who never raised his voice at her, who touched her as if she were made of glass, had killed without hesitation. And he had done it for her. Raine suddenly sat up, her body stiff and tense. Dark circles shadowed her eyes from the nightmares that had plagued her ever since that night. She stared blankly at the closed door. Before she could think, her body moved on its own. She rushed to the door and yanked it open. Her hands shook. Her knees felt weak. Fear clawed at her chest. The last time she stepped out of this room, something terrible had happened. And yet here she was doing it again. She stood alone in the corridor, the silence pressing in on her. Panic surged, and she stumbled back a step, hugging herself tightly. Her teeth sank in her lower lip as she forced herself to move. She wanted to see him. Grinding her teeth, Raine made herself put one foot in front of the other. The emptiness around her sent chills down her spine, but she pushed on stubbornly. Her nails dug deep into her palms as she tried to hold her fear at bay. Only heaven knew how much courage it took for her to keep walking. It felt like she was dragging 1,000 bricks with every step. Torak's raw, honest confession echoed in her mind. He did all of that to protect her. When she reached the last few steps, she scanned the large room below, filled with odd decorations and unfamiliar shapes. But the one person she wanted to see wasn't there. Her legs finally gave out. She collapsed, then crawled until her back hit the wall, seeking even the smallest illusion of safety. She wrapped her arms around her legs and buried her face, tears spilling out again. She missed him. He was gone. Would Torak hate her now? After everything he had done to keep her safe, she had recoiled from him. She had looked at him like he was nothing but a monster. He had even apologized for frightening her. He hadn't needed to. His status alone meant he owed no one an explanation, yet he'd given her one anyway. Shame twisted in her chest. Raine felt utterly horrible about herself.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Suddenly, she felt the familiar spark on her head, caressing her hair tenderly. It was only one person that could have done that, and it was him. Raine relished the touch as she lifted her head slowly. Her obsidian black eyes met with his blue one. They were the most beautiful blue that Raine had ever seen. She loved to stare at them, and Torak felt likewise. They remained like that for another minutes before Raine pounced on him. Torak didn't see this coming as he was caught out of guard and fell on his, but inharmoniously as Raine continued to cry on his shoulder, tangled her thin arms around his neck tightly. The girl was afraid, and now, when she was with him, she realized that her fear toward Torak was insignificant compared to the thought of him had abandoned her. That fear was only in her mind, though, as Torak wouldn't ever leave her even if she didn't want him. Even if someone tore his body apart, his dirty soul would follow her tirelessly. Torak patted her back as he let out a sigh of relief. She was in his arms, and that was the most important thing for him right now. He let Raine stain his shirt with her tears and snots until her heart contented. It took some time before her cry died down. Due to the stress, Torak could feel she had lost some weight. When he hugged her, it made him dissatisfied. "Have you eaten, my love?" Torak whispered softly in her ear, but she shook her head. "I will ask someone to cook something for you, all right?" Raine shook her head again weakly. She couldn't eat anything this past 2 days without throwing up, but Torak had not given up yet. "You know, yesterday I watched someone cooking spaghetti. It looks quite easy. If I make one, will you eat it?" Torak persuaded her. Raine gave some thought about the idea before she nodded her head. Torak was more than elated, to say the least. Carefully, he lifted Raine by her thighs and carried her to the kitchen while the girl was resting her head on his shoulder and hugging his neck. She looked like an oversized koala in his arms as he carried her that way. Occasionally, along the way to the kitchen, Torak would kiss her head and nuzzled his nose against her shoulder. With all the anxiety that hit him relentlessly for the fear she would hate him for what he had done, it felt like it had been years since the last time he had her so close like this. But now it was all good now. Torak sat her down on the countertop of the island. He got a tissue to clean up her face from her tears. "Wait here. I will make delicious spaghetti for you." He kissed the tip of her nose as she giggled silently. It was a good sign to see her smiling face again, as if the incident 2 days ago had been long forgotten. Equals 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 equals. A woman was lying motionlessly on the extravagant bed with black curtain that intricate with golden stitch, which covered her from the rest of the room. Her long blonde hair scattered all over the pillow beneath her head. She looked so pale as if her skin was translucent. One could see her blue vein beneath. When she will wake up, a woman in white tutu dress twirled her hair coquettishly while nodding at the girl on the bed. "Don't know." Belphegor shrugged his shoulder nonchalantly. "Her body was too weak when I ripped her soul and killed the Lycan inside her. There was a chance she will not survive." Lilith threw him a glare. If she couldn't survive, why have to take a risk and make a fuss to trespass Torak's territory? If it wasn't for the help that she got, she wouldn't be able to enter the Raven village, let alone to bring Genedieth out of the prison. Belphegor and Lilith were staring down at the unconscious Genedieth, standing right beside her bed. "Let's hope she will survive." Belphegor yawned, stretched his stiff arms, and walked away. "And think about this matter later." "You," Lilith shouted at Sloth's back angrily. It was hard to keep up with his laziness. Well, he couldn't be blamed for that, or else he wouldn't have made a name of himself. "You better survive from this." Lilith hissed agitatedly. This girl was needed for their next plan. The smell of tomato sauce and grilled meat wafted in the air as a faint white smoke floating from the frying pan. Raine wiggled her legs that dangling from the countertop where she was sitting, her eyes attentively following Torak's every moves. It almost an hour since he insisted to cook something for her. Torak moved swiftly as if it wasn't his first time inside the kitchen. He himself couldn't believe it that he has this inside him. He wouldn't have thought that one day he would cook something, moreover it was for another person. But to think he did this for his mate, there was nothing to be ashamed of. He stood there, with spoon in his hand while tasting the spaghetti. "I'm sure I have put it right," he murmured to himself. The spaghetti looked delicious, but the taste wasn't as he expected. Raine jumped down from the island and approached him. She grabbed the spoon from Torak's hand and tasted it by herself. "The taste is bland, right?" Torak said when he looked at the frown that forming between her eyebrows. Raine nodded, agreed with him, and then, nimbly, she took the seasoning, put more marinara sauce and salt, stirred it well until all the sauce and seasoning blended. She was used to fend herself when she was in the orphanage. That place was not any better than the mental institution where she had admitted for 3 years. There was no warmth or love behind its old wall. All the people there were thinking about themselves. As long as the government kept supporting them, another matter wasn't an issue. Hence, Raine's life also didn't get better. Her physical abused turned to be verbal abused, and it happened since the first day she was there. Raine gave the spoon and let Torak taste it while she asked with her eyes. She had tried, and the taste was fine with her. In the other hand, Torak got the spoon and tried it as his face beaming with amazement. "You are amazing, my love." He leaned over and kissed her forehead. Why don't you sit over there, and I will prepare the food. Raine was about to walk to the dining table when someone opened the door and startled her. Out of instinct, she backed off and pounced on Torak, holding his waist tightly while burying her face against his chest. "It's all right. It is Belinda." Torak's voice brushed her ears soothingly while his hand moved up and down on her back. "What is it?" This time his voice was laced in irritation when he talked toward the intruder. "Well," Belinda was standing on the doorstep awkwardly. She looked at Raphael beside her, who gave her a look that could interpret it as, "I have told you they are fine. I just worry because you have not come out yet after so long," she said, twiddling with her thumbs like a child. "But since both of you are fine, I think I will go." Belinda gave Torak a timid look. No matter what, being under this alpha, intimidating stare wasn't a pleasant thing. "Bye, Raine." She waved at Raine, who was peeking through Torak's arm before she took her leave. "If you're done, I have something to inform you about the incident with Raine 2 days ago." Raphael linked him. Torak only nodded, and that was enough to make Raphael leave the room, letting the alpha and the future Luna alone. "Shall we eat now, Angel?" His voice softened every time he spoke with her. Equals 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 equals. After the dinner, Torak carried Raine, who had fallen asleep, back to their mansion. Seemingly, the mulation stress that she had been enduring eventually took a toll on her. She was fast asleep, seemed so peaceful that made Torak couldn't help but relish the moment a bit longer despite Raphael was waiting for him outside the door. After some time, Torak got off from the bed reluctantly, tucked his mate inside the warm blanket, and walked out of the room. "What is it?" Torak asked after he had closed the door behind him. Raphael and Caleb, who had been waiting for more than 15 minutes, looked at each other when Torak leaned his back against the wall behind him. His gesture conveyed a message that he wanted to keep the conversation short without leaving his mate. Clearing his throat, Raphael settled to having their discussion there at the corridor. After all, no one could change his mind at this moment to leave his mate alone. Someone had killed Matthias' mate. And who is this Matthias? Torak raised his eyebrows. "The werewolf who had attacked Luna." Caleb replied. Torak rarely dealt with his warriors. Most of the time, it would be Raphael and Caleb who handled them. He only familiarized himself with his personal warriors, whom most of them were Lycan. Hence the Matthias name didn't ring a bell in his head. Something had happened to Matthias' mate. She had been missing for 2 days before the attack. Raphael informed the Alpha. "We have investigated about what had happened to her, and a close friend of both of them said Matthias told him that his mate had been attacked brutally by werewolves in the same day when Genevieve escaped from the dungeon. Since then, Matthias wasn't like himself." Caleb added. Torak discerned the information in his mind, trying to put the pieces of the information together. His silence was a command for them to keep talking. It's understandable, given the fact he had just lost his mate. Caleb was the one who did the talking. "But when I investigated the place where Matthias' mate was being attacked, I found this." He fished out something from his pocket and handed it to Torak. It was a small golden flake that glimmered under the lamplight. Torak held the flake between his fingers. "Dragon scale." Torak recognized the piece. "We think the same," Raphael said. He was a little bit antsy with Torak's confirmation. After all these years, the dragon people have been keeping low profile. However, during the war between lycanthropes and demon, their kind pledged their allegiance toward the demon. And when they got a sniff of the outcome of the war, didn't favor those demons anymore. All the dragon people changed side. Caleb looked at Raphael. "I read that. Was that true?" After all, the young Lycan has not lived long enough to know the real story. Among the 3 of them, the only living Lycan who experienced the war was only Torak. They are more cunning than that. Torak didn't offer any explanation of his words. He just gave back the small flake of the dragon scale to Raphael. "Arrange my meeting with their lord. I want an explanation. It was so daring of them to trespass his territory and killed his people. This was an atrocious act, and he wanted retribution." With that being said, Torak opened the door of his room and disappeared behind it. "So, we will meet with the Dragon Lord?" Caleb raised his eyebrows. "I heard those dragon people don't have a good temper." Raphael looked back at the Gamma while rolling his eyes. No matter how bad their temper, they're nothing compared to our alpha. Caleb shuddered when he remembered how easy Torak crushed Matthias' head. You get the point. It was dark, for the reason that nothing could be seen. Raine didn't know where she was. But she knew he was there, so close to her that she could feel his warm breath was tracing down her jaw to the bottom of her collarbones, sending a heat to her lower abdomen in the process, and the next second his breath had brushed her breast. She gasped as a MON escaped her lips, and he growled as a response. Raine closed her eyes again and focused to her other senses. She felt his calloused hand on his waist, and she was pulled to him. Suddenly, her hair was entangled among his slender fingers as he turned her head in a way that revealed her neck to him. His nose nuzzled the crook between her neck and shoulder, nibbling there. Raine's breath hitched with torturous delight. She felt being pushed to lie on the floor as his rough hands grabbed hold of her breasts, and his lips wildly kissed her neck. He was hovering above her. He was so rough with her. The next moment, she felt his lips crashing against hers, the kiss very intense and possessive. His tongue entered her mouth and sucked her sweetness. Part of her was scared. He was so dangerous. But deep down, she knew his embrace was the safest place for her. A few moments later, she became breathless, and when he parted their lips, he mumbled into her ears, "Mine," as if the darkness sucked her being into a deep hole. She was in shock, and her mind reeled as she gasped loudly for air. Her body stiff and numb, she sucked in a breath of cold air the moment she regained her consciousness. It was a dream, but felt so real. When someone's hand touched her cheeks, out of instinct, Raine tried to pry herself away from his clutch, but he was too strong for her. Fear gripped her heart when she felt his breath on her neck as his hand around her body held her tightly. But then she heard his voice. "My love, it's me." Torak kept repeating this word to her ear with a sense of helplessness. "You are safe. It's me, I am here." Raine didn't realize the man who was holding her until she heard his voice, and as he switched on the bed lamp, his face came in a light. She stopped her attempt to hit him. It was Torak beside her. Everything was fine. It was only a dream. It's just a nightmare. Torak was chanting that word again and again until Raine calmed. Her bright eyes scanned her surroundings. She wasn't in the dark place where she couldn't see anything. She was in her and Torak's bedroom, and the powerful Lycan was looking at her with worry vividly reflected in his eyes. Raine was hugging his waist tightly while burying her face on his chest. Torak said it was a nightmare, but it felt so real for her. Equals 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 equals. The kisses, the breath, the pleasure, and the touch. Raine brought back to reality when someone touched her shoulder. She startled and looked at the man beside her in alarm. "What are you thinking, my love?" Torak caressed her pale cheeks with his thumb. "You look distracted, still thinking about last night's dream? Do you want to tell me?" Raine bit her inner cheeks. There was no way she could tell him about her dream. She averted her eyes at the rows of pine trees outside the car window. Today, Torak brought her to the city again as he had a meeting to attend. Instead of answering his question, Raine asked another question to distract her mind that kept bringing her back to think about that dream. "Who we will meet." She typed on her iPad and showed it to Torak. "Reynold Magnus." Torak made his answer short. Frowning, Raine typed another question. "What is he?" Probably it was the right question. Torak pulled her closer into his warm hug as he replied, "Dragon Lord." Raine startled when she heard Torak mention Dragon Lord. Is that really a dragon? Her big eyes widened adorably in shock. It never crossed her mind that there was really a living dragon in this world. Moreover, she had never seen one. "Yes, my love." Torak chuckled. Even a little gesture from his mate could make him happier than anyone ever did. A faint, strange sound from the passenger seat made Raphael and Caleb peered at them through the rearview mirror curiously. It was very rare to see their alpha smiling, let alone chuckled so innocently like that, The last time he showed another expression except his regular impassive, stoic face, 7 werewolves died. However, it was very easy for Raine to enchant another side of him. Torak looked more normal with her, less scary and more warm. Can they talk? Raine didn't know if this question sounded stupid or not, but she was so fascinated with the possibility she could see a real dragon. It's supposed to be frightening, but with Torak, she felt safe. Of course, we will see them in their human form. Torak pulled Raine's hairband and let her hair loose. They are not allowed to shift into their beast form. He played with her hair mindlessly, a hobby that he had developed whenever he was with her. Why they're not allowed to shift? You can shift whenever you want. There's a story behind it. I will tell you another time, all right? Raine nodded, slightly disappointed. She had only heard about dragon from a bedtime story that her mother read for her when she was a child. Torak nuzzled her cheek. Their original form is not much different from what you have seen in fairy tale story. He shrugged, slimy and scaly. Raine grinned with Torak's last comment. He didn't really like them. They had entered a main gate of a huge manor. The sounds that produced when the gates opened was disturbing, as though this place had been long abandoned. Torak's car entourage went inside. It needed 10 more minutes to reach the manor on the top of the hill. Torak, will you bring Raine inside? Raphael linked him from the driver's seat. Yes, she is safer with me. Torak believed that Raphael and Caleb could protect Raine just fine, but it eased his mind to have his mate in his sight, within his reach. But bring her away in my queue. If the discussion turned ugly, he didn't want to feed Raine with another violent scene. All right, as Raphael agreed. They had arrived in front of the door of the Dragon Lord's residence. For people in black suit and sturdy body approached their car, they were flanked a man in his early 30s who was smiling broadly. Stay close to me, Torak said before he helped Raine get off the car. The man who was standing in the middle of his guards stepped forward with arms wide open the moment he saw Torak, but stopped abruptly when he saw Raine. Supreme Alpha Torak, she is... He didn't finish his word and hoped Torak could fill the blank. My mate, Torak said curtly, intertwined his fingers with Raine's. Mate? He frowned. His yellow eyes slithered on Raine's petite body, scrutinized her every curve that she didn't show much. Raine was wearing maroon sweater and jeans, the contrary attire from the rest of those people there, who were wearing business suit. She was comfortable with that clothes, and Torak wanted nothing except make his mate happy with a small thing like this. I don't know if you have a mate. Maybe you mean a lover. He clicked his tongue, his eyes still glued on Raine. Make her feel uncomfortable. Take your eyes from her, or I will take them out. Torak warned him in deep voice. His dark eyes glared fiercely at the impertinent man in front of him. The 4 guards seethed their teeth as their body reacted at Torak's hostility behavior, ready to lunge onto a battle. Dragon Shifter was a haughty creature with presumptuous behavior. They didn't aware of who they were facing now. Their self-glorification covered their eyes and ears along with their capability to judge their situation now. While the population of lycanthropes and werewolves has risen during these past centuries, Dragon Shifter number were decreasing for the fact they were lack of female. Most of them were having crossbreeding with other creature. However, that wasn't a solution either, as they couldn't impregnate other female outside of their race. With the 20 Lycans that Torak brought along, the threat from the 4 Dragon Shifters weren't threat at all. They could shake down the entire manor right there and then. Stop! He stopped the 4 guards behind him, who was still baring their teeth, glaring at them one by one. Go inside, he said in deep voice. Raine, who was hiding behind Torak's broad back during the short aggression, poked her head out to see what was happening. The 4 guards had a tense expression as they clenched their jaws tightly and balled their hand into fists, but they complied to the man before them nonetheless. In less than 10 seconds they dispersed and out of sight, leaving the impertinent man unguarded. Regardless of being alone, a deviant smile still etched on his thin lips. I apologized, Supreme Alpha, for their behavior. Please come inside. Lord Stefan. Torak didn't welcome his kind gesture. He caressed Raine's head as a reassuring gesture that everything was all right. I remember that your brother, Lord Reynolds, is the one whom I will meet. His deep voice wasn't loud, but laced with intimidating tone. "I'm sorry, Alpha Torak, but my brother is not in his best condition at the moment. He is in our manor in Lycan City." Stefan looked at Torak in reserved manner, no more daring to even steal a glance at Raine. "If he is 2,000 miles away from here, how can I smell him from inside the manor?" Torak narrowed his eyes dangerously as he stepped forward with Raine in his tight grip beside him. Torak and his Lycans welcomed themselves as they stepped inside. They were standing in the great hall as Torak made his way and sat Raine down on a luxurious settee. "Find him," Torak said in low voice while his eyes fixed on Raine's confused expression. When the 20 Lycans were about to leave to rummage the manor, Stefan suddenly knelt on the ground. "Alpha, I am sorry. I didn't mean to lie to you. It was my brother who had forced me to do so." His arrogant demeanor faded away as he begged for mercy. "He is on the 2nd floor, inside the 3rd room from left. You can find a secret room behind a shelf book." Without a second thought, Stefan had sold his brother out without hesitation as he sought Torak's sympathy. What a pathetic dragon shifter. Caleb hissed at Raphael beside him while looking at Stefan with disdain. He is a shame for their race. Stefan's betrayal wasn't a common trait for the haughty dragon shifter. Seemingly, he had not upheld the pride of being a dragon shifter. "Indeed," Raphael replied. Looking at the 10 Lycans went to the 2nd floor. There were not many dragon shifter were living in that magnificent manner. Except from Stefan and the 4 guard, there were only another 3 more. Raine insisted to not make an appearance, and should the force was needed, Torak would have the upper hand in this situation. Not long after that, loud sound from the 2nd floor could be heard. Seemingly, Raine resisted to give up and decided to kick a fuss. Stefan was still kneeling on the floor with both hands clasped together. "My love, we'll be fine with you if I leave you here with Caleb. I need to go upstairs with Stefan to see his brother." Torak was standing behind the settee as he leaned over and whispered into Raine's ears. His warm breath brushed against her neck and from the corner of her eyes. Raine watched Stefan, shook his head vigorously, silently asking for Raine to refuse Torak offers, and kept the beast with her. Raine stared at him for another second before she tilted her head and smiled sweetly at Torak while nodding her head. She agreed for Torak to leave her. After Stefan's lie in order to hide his brother, Torak wouldn't be so generous to leave him unscathed. He was doomed, to say the least. Torak leaned over to peck Raine's lips. That made both of them smile because of the spark from their touch. "Follow me," Torak said offhandedly while walking past him. Stefan's body was rejecting the order, but he knew that he would end up even worse if he didn't follow him. Thus, with heavy shoulder, he dragged his body toward the 2nd floor, walking a few steps behind the Alpha with head hung low. The fuss from upstairs seemingly had subsided. As they walked closer, muffled sound of howl and snarl could be heard. As if Torak had announced his presence, someone had actually opened the door the moment Torak arrived. Inside the bedroom, where books and shattered glasses spread on the floor, the 3 guards and Raine had arrested, with 2 Lycans flanked on their right and left side. Torak sat down on an exquisite armchair, comfortably, facing the 5 dragon people who had been subdued in front of him. He crossed his legs and rested his chin on his fist lazily, however his eyes still as dark as the night. "Lord Raine," Torak dragged his words dangerously. "Alpha Torak." Raine stubbornly held Torak's gaze, even though his voice trembling. The true Lord of Dragon Shifter's guts truly worth their name. "I assumed you know why I waste my time here." Torak's deep voice reverberated inside the room. "I don't know, and I don't wish to meet you." Raine's shoulders were shaking when he blurted out his outburst. "After hundreds of years your kind have been confining my people, do you think I want to see you? You are not the one who asking question in this room." Torak straightened up. His body gave off a terrible aura by his defiance. "I want an explanation of this." Torak flicked his fingers and a small golden thing flew, glimmering in the air, before it landed in front of Raine. The Dragon Lord shook his body to shove away the 2 Lycans who arrested him. With a gesture from Torak, they let him go. Raine grunted and glared at the 2 of them. "I don't have time to listen to your whining." Torak snapped at him, who still didn't examine the dragon scale in front of him. "One of your kind had killed mine and endangered my mate. Reynolds glared at Torak before he picked the golden scale on the ground. It glimmered under the lamp light as his eyes flickered in understanding. Every scale has their own pattern that could be recognized easily by their fellow dragon shifter, so it was almost impossible for Reynolds to say that he didn't know directly. "I don't know," Reynolds said haughtily. A smirk made its way on Torak's lips. It was kind of smirk that you don't want to see. His black eyes fogged when one of the Lycan, who was holding Reynolds earlier, stepped forward. He moved so fast and unexpectedly. Only when Reynolds felt the antagonizing pain on his right hand, he realized that he had lost his hand. Torak had ordered his warrior to chop off his hand. A shrill scream rung through the whole manor. The sound was so terrifying, and then hair, raising deep guttural growl followed when another Lycan covered his mouth. "Stop crying, or I will cut off your other hand. My mate just downstairs, and she is still quite shaken by the recent incident that involved your kind," Torak warned him. His threat was able to recede Reynolds' growl, but the whimper still echoed inside the room. Meanwhile, upstairs, Raine whipped her head up when she heard the scream. Her beautiful eyes widened in fear as she stood up and ran toward Caleb. "It's all right, Luna. It's all right." The Gamma tried to calm her by stroking her back the way Torak did. However, it was obvious the result was totally different. Raine looked at him with questioning eyes. Tears brimmed on the edge of her eyes. "Ugh." Caleb scratched his head. "What do you want to ask, Luna? I don't understand your gaze," he said helplessly. Raine typed something on her iPad and showed it to Caleb. "I want to see Torak." "Ugh. It is best to not see him at this moment." It was best for her and for him too. "It isn't the scene that you want to see," Caleb added carefully. Raine bit her lips, the memory of Torak's outburst still clear in her mind. But what if he gets hurt? Reading that, Caleb didn't know whether he wanted to laugh or cry. The Alpha gets hurt? It's impossible, Luna, impossible. He waved his hand lazily. It was hard to imagine Torak would get hurt at this point. Moreover, there is Raphael, and another 10 people come with him. The Alpha will be fine. Raine knew that Torak probably was torturing someone, but it wasn't her business. Torak was nice to her, more than nice to say the least, and she still didn't know how this supernatural world worked. Thus, she couldn't judge him by his action now. The last time Torak killed someone was to protect her. That wasn't a solution, but at least he did that to ensure her safety. She had had enough with people who was trying to hurt her. Therefore, she would only trust him no matter what he did. "I smell scent of flower. There must be a garden full of blossom flower nearby. Why don't we go there and wait for Alpha?" Caleb suggested. His nose rose in the air, picked up the scent. Raine looked at the stairs to the second floor warily, but then nodded, agreed to wait for him in the garden. "How is she?" Suddenly Torak's voice rang inside Caleb's head as he linked him. "She is fine, Alpha. I will bring her to the garden and wait for you there," Caleb answered, while looking at Raine, who was still looking at the second floor. "You worry at the wrong person, Luna," Caleb thought. After Torak sure that Raine was fine, he resumed his focus at the bleeding dragon shifter in front of him. Dark blood stained the white floor and was still oozing out from his wrist while his hand was lying not far from him, pale and dead. "Do you think you can get anything from me just because you cut off my hand?" Reynolds was still with his stubborn nature when he hissed with malice. "No, but you still have other hand, legs, ears, and eyes. I just need your mouth to talk." "No, but you still have other hand, legs, ears, and eyes. I just need your mouth to talk." Torak's words were as light as a feather, but held so much threat behind them. However, it wasn't an empty threat. He would do exactly like he had said. Nothing could stop him, or he was willing to stop. It was only a matter of time before he found the real aggressor, but he thought he could save his time by confront the Dragon Lord directly. The only matter was, the Dragon Lord was more stubborn than the last time they met. "Brother, why don't you let the Alpha know? He will kill you," Stefan whimpered. His yellow eyes were pleading at his brother. It was only the two of them, the last royal blood from the Earth Dragon shifter. If Torak was really going to kill Reynolds, then Stefan would rather die as well. The responsibility for being the almost extinct creature wasn't something that a coward like him could bear. Reynolds had spoiled him so much until he lost Stefan's identity as the prideful creature. "Brother, please," Stefan sobbed. Torak was appear boring to see the bloody scene and the whimpering from both brother or low growled of dissatisfaction from the other 3 dragon shifters that acted as guard for the 2 of them. He wanted to finish this matter as soon as possible, as his mind kept running toward his mate with his beast didn't help by snapping at him countless times to sort out this issue. The last time he left Raine alone, something bad had happened. And even though Caleb was with her, he still couldn't rest assured if he didn't have her in his arms. Cut his hand. Torak intertwined his slender fingers and rested his chin atop of them. Torak shook his head lightly when one of his warrior was about to cut off Reynold's last hand. Not him. Whimper, howl, and grunt filled the room when Torak issued his order. Fear flooded both brothers' eyes. However, while Stefan pleaded for mercy, Reynold was still with his stubbornness, even though the color of his face had drenched, leaving him pale face. Reynold still refused to talk. Cut him. The ruthless alpha pointed his chin at Stefan when he disallowed the Lycan to make any move toward Reynold. No, no, no. Stefan was about to run with all of his strength, but Raphael was way faster than him when he tackled him down to the floor and would cut his hand off by himself. Stay away from my brother. Reynold roared when he saw Raphael had held Stefan's hand, ready to make his brother miserable. I will talk. Stay away from him. Just like Torak had thought, he had threatened wrong person. Reynold could have his arms, legs, eyes and ears cut off or bleed to die, but he wouldn't let his brother hurt. His way of pampered his only brother was well known. With a simple wave from Torak, Raphael stopped his hand mid-air, but his claws was elongated threateningly only an inch from his hand. Start talking, Torak commanded, but you have to give me your protection. Stefan panted from the pain of his wounded hand and from the outburst of motion. Or else I will be good as dead. It is not only me, but my entire Earth Dragon clan will be finished. Interesting. Torak stood up and walked toward the Dragon Lord. You are not in position to bargain with me. He stood 3 steps away from him to avoid his black blood stained his leather shoes. I want your word, Reynold insisted. His eyes showed how determined he was. Or you get nothing from me, even if you kill my brother. Spill out all of your information, and I will protect you as best as I could. Torak gave him his words. Which dragon shifter owned that scale? It's me, Reynold blurted out. The scale is mine. Brother, how could be that possible? Stefan screamed in fear. What was inside his brother's brain? Did he just eat dragon heart? Why on earth he killed Torak's people? Did he tired of living? Stefan couldn't comprehend his brother's way of thought. Alpha, Supreme Alpha. Someone must be trying to blackmail my brother. He wouldn't do that. Someone must be behind all of this. Stefan said incoherently, frantically trying to save his brother's life. Silent, Torak roared. Don't speak if I didn't order you to do so. His outburst successfully shut Stefan up. He whimpered under Raphael restraint. His face was facing the floor while his body shuddered. You had actually shifted to kill my people. Don't you know that you had broken 2 rules? Torak was squinted his eyes dangerously. How would you expect me to spare your life? Reynold's first offense was the fact that he had shifted. Centuries ago, when the dragon shifter had betrayed the lycanthropes to side with demon, they became sworn enemy. But later on they changed their side again and helped the lycanthropes when they learned that the demon had lost the battle. As the consequences of their betrayal and to seek forgiveness, in fear the 3 Donovan brothers would issue an order to extermination their kind, the dragon shifter made a sworn declaration that they would never shift back into their dragon form again, except for 2 occasions. This oath was made to show that they wouldn't be a threat ever again. And his second offense was, of course, the fact that he had killed Torak's people and caused an uproar that led to an assault on Raine. You gave me my word that you will ensure my safety. Reynold fretted. The 2 rules that he had broken could cost his life. Torak scoffed. Fine. Very well. The corner of his lips curled into a smirk. I will not kill you, but if my other brothers catch the wind about this, it will be up to them. Reynold mumbled something incoherently while Stefan whimpered pitifully. Now answer my question. Torak continued the interrogation. Who ordered you to do that? Torak's piercing glare directed at the pale dragon shifter, His wound had closed, and the blood had stopped, thanks to his healing ability. One of the 7 sins from hell. Reynolds mumbled, but Torak and the rest of the people inside the room could hear him clearly nonetheless. Which one? Torak had predicted that they were behind all this. I can't tell you, or he will kill our last female. Reynolds was troubled. If their last female was dead, there would be no more Earth Dragon Shifter. Their line would be ended with them. If it wasn't for saving their bloodline, Reynolds wouldn't be so brave to go against Torak. Even so, he regretted it deeply now. He should think another way to solve this problem. At this point, their bloodline would not only be in danger, but their life were under Torak's mercy by now. The people tend to say the Alpha didn't have any. Belphegor. Torak said that name. With a surprise that flickered in Reynolds' eyes, he knew that he had mentioned the right name. You have to save us. Reynolds begged him. You have to save us. Reynolds begged him. Or else they would use us to go against you. He didn't know what else he should say for Torak to save their race. No, you will not if you dead. Torak glared at him. This dragon people really bold to say those words to him. No, it's not what I meant. Reynolds hastily shook his head, realized that Torak got the wrong side of his warning. They will use us to go against you even if we are dead. Don't you remember what they had done during war centuries ago? They revived my dead grandfather. Torak's gloomy eyes were slightly narrowed by the mention of the war. Reynolds was not born yet when the war happened. However, it was a hereditary story about the mistakes that Dragon's people at that time had made. A disgrace. What you will offer to me for your safety. Torak stared at the helpless Dragon Lord. He knew his father and grandfather. Both of them were the people who had betrayed him and his brothers during the war. No, not my safety. I want our female back, Reynolds said. It was important for them to save their female in order to carry on their descent. Torak gave some thought about this before he decided. Very well. He nodded in agreement. However, you have to pay the high price for the death of my people. Anything. Reynolds didn't think twice when he agreed. Anything. Torak raised his eyebrows as his lips curled in mockery. I want all your possession, including your land, estate, company, and pledged your submission only to me. Stefan's jaw dropped. He didn't believe what he had heard. This Alpha had robbed them in the middle of the day. Impossible, he screamed. You can't do that to us. Reynolds also was in shock. If he agreed to give him everything, then what was left for him? What the meaning of being the Lord if he had nothing? He was flabbergasted. That's or I will exterminate the remaining Earth Dragon. His voice sounded like a final verdict for them. He was as ruthless as the King of Hell, who wouldn't bat an eye when he looked at the downfall of his enemies. Any creatures in this realm must think twice before they messed with him. Only because he stayed low in these past years didn't mean the beast inside him was dead. Alpha, Supreme Alpha, Reynolds stuttered. If I gave you everything, what left for me and my people? We had been living in disgrace because of our predecessor betrayal. We can't live lower than that. It was humiliation, and as a haughty creature, Dragon Shifter couldn't live in that way. If it wasn't to save their race, they wouldn't have ever stooped that low. It's not necessary like that. After you had transferred all of your assets, you will run your business like usual under my consent. I will allow you to hold your title as a lord and stay in your manor. Torak said all of those things as if he'd thought about it thoroughly. No one could understand the way he was thinking. Or, I will finish you all, right here, right now. Torak spoke with no room for negotiation. Moreover, they were not in the position for negotiated anything with the furious Alpha. One stupid decision Reynolds made with Belphegor cost him everything. They have no other choice. Reynolds have no other choice. I will abide your decision. With that defeated words, the 2 Lycans who were holding Reynolds down released him. Raphael did the same to Stefan and the 3 dragon guards in the room. The 5 of them were being released the moment Reynolds agreed at Torak's demand. Stefan scrambled toward his brother with tears, and snot stained his handsome face. He was only 78 years old, a young age for a dragon shifter who had long lifespan. He was holding his brother's bloody hand, trembling. How ruthless Alpha Torak to cut off his brother's hand. He would be crippled, but he didn't have enough courage to voice out his dissatisfaction. His brother did nothing except wanted to save their last female to protect their lineage. And about the betrayal, it was their predecessor's fault. There was no connection to his brother and him. Why did he punish them? Raph, clean up here. Torak was done dealt with them. It was time to go back to his mate. All right, worry not. Raphael waved the alpha away, assured him that he would handle things there. Once Torak was out of the room, he sniffed the air and followed the familiar addicted scent that was able to calm his nerve in an instant. Raine's smell was mixed with Caleb, and with that Torak's burrows knitted slightly. He didn't like another male scent near her, even though it was the gamma. He picked up his pace, and in no time, he had arrived at the garden that located at the backyard of the manor with beautiful sculpture fountain. His mate was sitting at the edge of the reservoir while playing with the water absent-mindedly. She looked sullen for some reason that he didn't know. The ray of the afternoon light fell on her delicate white neck as she tied up her hair into a messy ponytail. Raine didn't see Torak was coming as her back was facing him, but her slumped shoulder indicating that she was not in a good mood. Caleb was standing beside her while the 10 Lycans, which supposed to protect them, were standing on guard a few meters away. Caleb noticed Torak's presence as he said with mischievous smile at Raine, "See, he is fine. I told you right." Raine whipped her head and looked at Torak in relief, but before that, she widened her eyes that Caleb assumed as a glare, but she was lack of intimidation. At this point, the gamma had gotten used with Torak's ferocious side, so her attempt to make herself look scary was fail miserably. Raine turned her body, and as Torak was approaching her, she gave him a smile as bright as the moonlight, so warm, beautiful, and pristine. Once Torak was close enough, Raine wrapped her slender hand around his waist as she sighed in content. Today was the longest day Torak had left her since the attack. She felt antsy and annoyed because Caleb refused to leave her and check on him. "Alpha, if you are a bit late, she will have cried." Caleb informed him that made Raine glared at him again. As Caleb was often babysit her, he grew fond of her and acted like a big brother, an annoyance one of course, as he liked to tease her if Torak was not nearby. "Do you worry about me?" Torak wrapped her waist carefully. He was still paranoid if he didn't cautious enough, he might end up hurting her. Raine nodded while burying her face on his chest. The sound of someone screaming before was still ringing in her ears. It was terrifying. "I'm sorry for making you worry." He whispered at her ear as he pulled her hairband and let her long black hair cascaded down on her back and shoulders. He combed her hair with his fingers as he hummed in satisfaction at the feeling of the soft fabric between his fingers. The Alpha, who would not say a word when he cut off the Dragon Lord's hand, was actually apologizing for something that he didn't have to. He looked totally different from 5 minutes ago. The bloodshot eyes and the killing intent that lingered around him dispersed in an instant once he held his precious mate in his arms. No one would have thought that he was so close to exterminate one race of dragon shifter a few minutes ago if they watched how good he treated Raine now. Sometime Caleb was curious about how far his alpha could go or how low he could bend for his mate. One could actually change drastically. "I don't think I want a mate," Caleb thought to himself. When the night came and the old manor appeared more forlorn than the day, time, as the light from inside had not yet turned on, a dragon lord with crippled hand was standing behind the big window with bleak expression. His hand had casted with thick bandages. With all the Lycans had been long gone, the tranquility inside the manor returned, but the rage within him didn't subside even an ounce. "Brother, you need a rest." Stefan approached Reynolds while holding a cup of warm water. "Is that still hurt?" He glanced at his brother's right hand as he recalled the event this morning. "No need to worry about this," Reynolds answered curtly, but his eyes still locked at the garden behind his manor as if he was waiting for something or someone. Alpha Torak really cruel. How he could do something like this. We had never betrayed him. Is not enough for him to forbid us to shift as we wish. That is our nature as a shifter. Stefan voiced out his resentment. The younger brother continued to complain grumpily for a few good minutes until he realized his brother didn't give any response to whatever he said. "But, brother, why did you kill Torak's people?" Eventually, he remembered the reason why the Alpha had come to seek for them. "That's just baseless accusation, right? He just wanted our assets." "No, I did kill his people." Reynolds admitted calmly as he turned around and looked past Stefan's shoulder. But why did you do that? Stefan frowned. You know that he will come after you. However, instead of answer his brother's question, he talked to the person behind him that no one knew since when he was standing there. I did what you had told me to do, and this is what I get. Reynolds showed him his bandaged hand as his eyes flickered with acrimony. You better wish that your plan is going well. Stefan abruptly turned around and looked at the ethereal beauty in front of him that rendered him speechless. He was so astoundingly appealing. His features looked as if it had been carved by gods themselves, which was indeed true. His entire body shone like a morning star while emanating a domineering aura and dignified air of monarch. The loss of your hand is nothing the moment you get your pride as a dragon shifter back. The man smiled alluringly. How am I supposed to get my pride back when that damn alpha snatched everything that I possessed right under my nose? Reynolds yelled at the alluring man. Brother, who is him? Stefan cowered behind his brother's back. Despite the man's divine features, something from him screamed danger. How did he get here? However, none of the two men heed his questions. Whatever he snatched from you, of course you can snatch it back the moment you topple him down, crawling beneath your feet. The man moved closer to Reynolds and Stefan. Once he is nothing than a pathetic wolf that is overthrown by you, you can be the sole sovereign in this realm, reviving the pride as the deity creature, the dragon. At this point, that man had stood in front of him with devilish smile graced his lips. Give me your hand. He reached out his hand, waiting for Reynolds. Where is Belphegor? Reynolds stared at the pale hand that was extended to him with complicated eyes. Where's my female? Don't worry. He takes good care of your female. The man answered in careless tone. However, it sounded wrong for Reynolds as anger consumed him. He lunged toward the man with half-shifted hand, his claws elongated from his scaly fingers, ready to tear that man apart. In 1 second that man was there, but in the next second when Reynolds almost clawed his heart out, he had disappeared from his sight. It's not a wise move. That man's voice sounded from behind Stefan. Upon hearing that sultry voice, Stefan jerked away as he ran toward Reynolds, hiding behind his back again. When I said Belphegor takes good care of her, it is in literally meaning. That man leaned his back against the windowsill. He is too lazy to mess around with unconscious woman. He mumbled as if he was reprimanding his fellow due to his lack of interest. I swear I will kill you if you touch her. Reynolds barked as his yellow eyes turned red with anger. However, that man chuckled heartily when he heard the way Reynolds threatened him. Dragon Lord, I don't even allow for you to kill. Where should I go if the hell is mine? That man tilted his head, scrutinized Reynolds with amused as Reynolds clenched his jaw tightly, his vein bulging with pressure. I heard Torak came with his mate. How he treated her. Do you really think you will have a mate? Don't you know that Donovans are condescending to not having one? Reynolds spat out scornfully. Oh dear, you know nothing about the moon goddess. That man approached Reynolds again, but this time he didn't try to attack him again. She is quite fickle sometime. She is really his mate. Stefan murmured behind his brother's back. What did you say? Reynolds retracted his claws as he looked at Reynolds over his shoulder. He came with a girl. I stared and flirted a bit. She looked so weak and smelled like human, but Alpha Torak threatened to gauge my eyes out if I kept staring at her. Reynolds closed his eyes to keep his annoyance at bay. Of course he did. Do you think, mate or not, he will let you away if you flirted with his companion? However, it was enough to fulfill that man's curiosity as he stretched out his hand and grabbed Reynolds' bandaged hand in his. Before Reynolds could retract his hand and moved away, a sudden pain that he had never felt before ran through his arms to his body, legs and head, turned his mind numb. A shrill agony screamed filled the manor once again as he slumped to his knees. The pain was unbearable, even worse than the moment it was cut off. His body was shaking, twisting, and convulsing as he was wailing to stop the pain. Stefan stupefied when he saw his brother's current condition and the moment he snapped out of it. He dashed toward the door while speaking incoherently. Brother, I will call the guards. Stefan was shouting in frenzy to call the guards once he was in the hallway. Upon hearing their lord's frantic call, 7 dragon shifter nearby sprinted toward him. "What is it, my lord?" One of them shouted back. He was currently running toward him, and at the moment he saw Stefan was standing in front of Reynolds' door. "Quick, quick! Someone attacks my brother." Reynolds ushered them inside. The 7 dragon shifter guards dashed into the room, ready for battle. However, they saw nothing. There was no intruder or the sign of people fight inside. There was only Reynolds, staring at his bandaged hand blankly. "Brother, where is he going?" Stefan crouched down beside Reynolds, scanning his surroundings while the 7 guards combed the room, looking for any sign of danger. Reynolds didn't answer his question as he kept staring at his hand. "Brother, tell me, where's he going? Did he hurt you? Are you hurt somewhere?" He posed a line of questions that none Reynolds answered. Instead, slowly he undid the bandages that wrapped his hand. Stefan tried to stop his intention, only to be swatted away by him. When the last bandages fell to the ground, gasps of shock could be heard from both of them. "Brother, your hand." Stefan pointed Reynolds' hand, trembling in disbelief. "It's back." The supposed to be handless was now a hand as fair as a feather, without any damage. It was dark, too dark for her to see her own hands, and was too quiet until she could hear her heartbeat on her ears. Raine crouched down, hugging her knees while trying to hear any sound from her surroundings. As fear crept in, a cold wind swirled like the vicious snake slithered around her body. She didn't know where she was or how she could get there. She was supposed to be with Torak inside their bedroom, sleeping soundly in his embrace, safe. But why she was here? And where's Torak? Raine could feel her fingertips froze as she was having difficulty to breath. She was afraid. "Torak," she sobbed his name faintly, as if it was a charm to keep her safe. "Torak," her body trembling as she felt the darkness thickened, if it was possible. For a moment of despair and didn't know what she should do to get out from this situation, suddenly someone stroked her hair, the same way Torak always did. However, it wasn't him. The feeling was different. There was no tingle sensation that was brought by that touch like how Torak's touch affected her. But somehow her body refused to reject that affection. If anything, she was longing for it. Raine gasped in surprise when someone's lips touched her nape, peppering butterfly kisses along her neck down to her collarbones. Her breath shortened as she relished the kisses and the touch. Among all of those sensations, Raine heard a rough voice of her kisser, rough and callous. "Mine." She had heard this voice before, but couldn't put her finger when or where. Suddenly, Raine's eyes snapped open, and there she was, back to her in Torak's familiar bedroom. Upon awakening from a strange dream, Raine stared at the ceiling blankly as the crystal from the chandelier reflected ray of the sun, which slipped from the slightly opened curtain. They were shimmering beautifully. But her mind reeled to her dream, still couldn't process what that dream was. It was the second time she'd dreamed about the man, who she had never met, in such intimate way. Her heart still thumping wildly as the feeling of his lips still lingered on her neck. She was shocked to say the least. How she could dream about another man when she was sleeping beside her mate. All right, Raine should admit the term of mate sounded odd in her ears, but she couldn't find a way to address Torak and her relationship. Boyfriend and girlfriend things didn't suit Torak's personality. It sounded childish, while Torak was a famous CEO in human world and the infamous Supreme Alpha in supernatural realm. Raine felt safe with him. She liked him, if it wasn't a love yet, but she was sure she would love him. It's just a matter of time. However, how she could dream about another man. Raine felt awful, as if she was cheating behind Torak's back. The clock that hung at the other side of the room informed her that it was still early in the morning, but when Raine looked at the space beside her, it was empty. Torak wasn't there, as his side felt cold in her palm. There was nothing strange with it, as Torak always woke up very early in the morning. He was probably already in his study room or in his office. Raine curled her body with the blanket and buried her face on his pillow, breathed in Torak's scent. She didn't want to fall asleep again, afraid if that dream would come back. Therefore, she freed herself from the blanket and got off from the bed. However, the moment she was about to stand up, the world spinning around her forced her to drop to her knees. What happened? Raine touched her throbbing head as if it would split into two, the dizziness still not leave her, and became even worse while her vision was getting blurred. Torak, she called out his name before another darkness consumed her. Buzzing sound was the first thing that hit Raine's senses. Afterward, the familiar voice that she would recognize even in the noisiest place rung in her ears. His voice laced with panic and agitation, like someone who had just lost his inheritance or something similar. Why she's not wake up yet? Something wrong with her? Torak growled in low voice. From the sound of it, Raine's condition almost drove him mad. Alpha, I have checked on her, and there is nothing wrong. She only gets a fever. There is nothing to worry about. Lucas's soft voice echoed inside the room, trying to calm Torak. She has only fainted because of her fever. Maybe she is too tired. Sleeping is good for her. Let her rest. He coaxed him. Lucas was a werewolf and a doctor who had previously run checkup on Raine. He had just injected Raine with acetaminophen as they were in the infirmary. There was nothing wrong with her. Everything was normal. She just got a normal fever, even though she should have woken up by now, but it's still within normal condition. There was nothing to worry about, at least not yet. In the other hand, Torak refused to move a muscle from his mate. He kept staring at her pale face, fixed his eyes at her closed eyelids, as if waiting for any sign from her to open them. Torak felt like his heart almost split open when he found out Raine fainted beside their bed. He thought someone had attacked her again. However, when he lifted her, her body was strangely very hot. Only then, it registered in his mind that she probably fainted because of sick. But it has been 4 hours, and she didn't give any sign that she would wake up soon. Her body temperature had not subsided yet, despite the injection that Lucas had given to her. Was she really tired because of these past weeks? Torak indeed had brought her along with him to various places because he, stubbornly, didn't want to leave her out of his sight. Was that a reason of her sickness? Because she exhausted herself? Torak was barely having an interaction with human, aside from business, as he always surrounded by his own people. Hence he didn't really understand how strong humans' body endurance was. Of course, it would be different from those creatures that he knew. He had been very strict and selective about any food that Raine consumed. He only gave her the best and tried not to tire her out. However, Raine had never complained that she felt something wrong with her body or there were indication that she was sick. And then how she suddenly fell unconscious with burning fever? Torak put his cold palm on her forehead. The heat stung his skin, but it felt nice on Raine as she fluttered her eyes open. My love, you are awake. Torak's voice laced in relief the moment he looked at her puzzled look. And then she spoke to him. Torak, it's hurt. Her melodious voice sounded so heartbreaking, as if she carried the unbearable pain. So soft, so faint. Her chapped lips quivered as her eyebrows locked together. Torak didn't have time to rejoice the moment of his mate speaking. All he heard, she was in pain. Lucas, she is in pain. Torak barked. If it's just a fever, she will not in pain like this. What kind of normal fever that possibly caused her so much pain? Which in pain? Torak was very anxious as he caressed her back. Raine curled her body in fetal position as she clutched her chest. Call Belinda, over. He roared to Lucas. I don't know what happened. Belinda shook her head helplessly. She's having a fever. She concluded. She is not just having fever, Belinda. Torak enunciated his every word clearly. The fever is not broke down even after Lucas gave an injection, and every time she awakes, she will feel pain on her chest. He felt like he was going insane. His beast, and he was on the edge of going berserk. Raine was put to sleep once again with sedative, so it could lessen her pain, while Lucas had been going back and forth to run another check on her with the same result. Nothing was wrong with her except her abnormally high temperature. Despite everything that Lucas had given to her, none of them worked. It had been 2 days since Raine fell unconscious again, and Lucas needed to give her sedative every time she was awake, because she would wail in pain. However, it couldn't be continued like this. There would be side effects if they kept feeding her with sedative. Raine had been brought to the Redriver City, the capital city of Zemblanity country, to get the best medical treatment with a private chopper. However, to their disappointment, all the medical procedures weren't working on her. Her temperature still high, and they couldn't find the source of her pain. Torak almost turned violent if it wasn't for Raphael and Caleb, trying hard to calm him down. Every doctor's there, whether human or Lycans, were afraid to inform him about Raine's condition as they didn't make any progress. As a result, because Lucas was known as Torak's private doctor, all the doctors there would report to Lucas and led him to reporting back to Torak. The poor werewolf couldn't reject his colleagues. Therefore, he felt like dying again and again every time he had to go to inform his alpha, as if he was going to hell and back. If it isn't physical illness, probably it has something to do with some sort of magic. Caleb muttered, "Dark magic." He looked over at Raphael because Torak's facial expression was too scary to see at the moment. Torak glanced at his gamma. Because of his opinion, while holding Raine's hand, it felt so tiny and frail in his wide palm as her chapped lips had turned purplish. He didn't know what went wrong. Everything was fine. But why suddenly she fell sick like this? I can't feel the dark magic from her. There is nothing related to magic. Belinda was standing at the other side of Raine's spacious bed. They gathered inside Raine's VVIP ward, the grand and astounding ward, which one would believe if it was a 7-stars hotel instead of a room in a hospital, couldn't hide the depressing atmosphere that emanated from the people inside. Maybe you have not checked on her thoroughly? Caleb suggested stubbornly. Even he felt bad upon seeing Raine's condition. I am a witch. What do you mean I don't know if some dark magic was casted on her? Belinda glared at Caleb, offended. It had just been 2 days, and she had looked like someone who was only waiting for her last breath. No wonder Torak was on edge. Their alpha probably would burn down those doctors along with his hospital if he really lost his mate. The pain of losing mate was unbearable. Not to mention Torak had just found him after centuries of waiting. If it is not an illness or dark magic. So what it is? Caleb was slumped his ass down on the comfortable sofa while looking at the glass ceiling window, as if he was looking for an answer from the glimmers of the city below. The room suddenly fell into a pin-drop silence. The only sound that echoed on the white wall was the beeping sound that indicating Raine's heartbeat. The sound was so weak, reminding them about the drop of water to the ground after the rain from the leaves, so serene, but wouldn't last for long. Torak kept his hand atop of Raine's as he fixed his eyes on her face. Her cheekbones were protruding as she lost another weight. Her initial, shining long black hair was dull, scattered on the white pillow, lost its brightness. While Caleb and Belinda were sitting on the sofa, and Raphael checked on something from his laptop, not far from them. They sucked in bed to a dreadful silence for more than an hour before a sound of the door opened drew their attention. Simultaneously, they directed their eyes toward the door when clicking sound of high heels were breaking the intensity in the air. A woman perfume had traveled to those Lycan's nose even before they could see the owner. Am I interrupting? The woman SEXY voice was heard along with the sight of her figures. A beautiful woman in white appeared from the direction of the door. She was wearing white windbreaker and shawl around her neck. Clanking sound of her high heels were the prominent sounds inside the silence ward. Her short red hair was tied neatly under her nape, and the perfume that she used wafted the Lycan's nose as they furrowed their eyebrows. What with that look? The woman glared at those people inside the room. Didn't like their exaggerated reaction. Caleb rushed toward the woman in alert. How did you get here? He snapped at her. There were guards outside the door, but how she could saunter into the ward easily. Where were all those guards? Take it easy. That woman folded her arms in front of her chest. She tilted her head while giving him lopsided smile. Surprised that I can enter this room easily? Who are you? Caleb didn't like that woman's attitude, and the way her eyes gleamed like she was hiding something. Step back, Cal. Torak's deep voice rang out. He didn't make any effort to stop his gamma by himself. Despite that, Caleb obeyed him nonetheless. What? Do you want to chase me out after your alpha effort to find me? That woman smiled smugly. She glanced at Torak, who still couldn't take his eyes off of his mate. It's okay, Cal. She is Seraphina. Raphael walked toward both of them along with Belinda. Caleb raised his eyebrows in surprise. The witch. There's a problem with that. Seraphina untied her shawl and put it on the nearest drawer. Her lime green eyes glided from Caleb to the girl on the bed, Her body connected with the beeping machine beside her. Nope, not at all. Caleb raised his hand in the air, lost his defensive stance. Only, you look younger than I thought. Serafina rolled her eyes, didn't bother to answer him. She did look younger than her age. Knowing she had lived for centuries, she looked like a woman in her early 20s. However, she was witch after all. They could maintain their appearance easily, deceiving onlookers, as long as they had the sufficient power to do that. Let's assume she used up all of her energy to preserve her appearance. Belinda chimed in, looking at Serafina scornfully. Oh, hi, my little sister. Serafina feigned her surprise when she heard her mockery. It's been a while. Don't hi me, Belinda scoffed. Serafina was Belinda's older sister from different father. While Serafina was way more powerful than Belinda, because her father also a witch, Belinda wasn't able to grasp the magic like she did due to her father was a Lycan. Moreover, Serafina was the last pure bloodline from her witch father. Do you come willingly, or it is because of James find you? Raphael swiftly took their attention before both sisters got into a quarrel. James? Your hunter? You should send someone to pick him up at the northern forest. I am afraid he will get trouble there. Serafina said nonchalantly. What on earth do you think you can catch me by sending that pathetic Lycan hunter? What did you do to him? Caleb asked curiously. Based on his encounter with Belinda, no one would end up in good shape if they managed to get a witch bad side. Nothing. Serafina shrugged her shoulder. However, nothing meant everything. They should start to worry about their fellow Lycan by now. Leave. Torak grunted, irritated with their exchange. Upon hearing the impatient in Torak's voice, Raphael then ushered Caleb and Belinda out of the ward while mumbling to the Gamma. We need to send someone to fetch James. After the soft clicked sound that indicating it was only the three of them inside the room, Torak lifted his head and stared impassively at Serafina, who made her way to sit on the edge of the bed, opposite him. He let out a low growl at the witch when she touched Raine's hand. Don't growl at me. Serafina scolded him, didn't show even slightest fear when she grabbed Raine's hand in hers. You are the one who is looking for me. I am looking for you for another matter, not this. Torak kept his eyes at Raine's hands that were grasped on Serafina's, ready to lunge onto her if she made a suspicious gesture. It is her, Serafina said. Her lime green eyes glimmered slightly. Since Torak sent his hunter to look for her, she knew that he had found his mate, the guardian angel. Just like what the prophecy said, Selene truly sent those Lycans their other half. However, Serafina still couldn't imagine how guardian angel was resurrected into a human form. It didn't make any senses for her. Human was other creature that didn't belong to their realm, and it made things more complicated. Belphegor had made a move. When Torak was sure Serafina didn't do anything that could harm Raine, he averted his eyes on his mate's face. She was still unconscious, but her lips didn't look as purplish as before. And also Lilith and her horde. He added, Lilith in her horde was her succubus that had infiltrated his dungeon before. Serafina clicked her tongue in annoyance the moment she heard Lilith's name, as if she had had a bad experience with that evil woman. Because the guardian angels have resurrected into this realm again, they're becoming more aggressive, I guess. Serafina kept holding Raine's hand until a faint red tinge appeared on her face as her purplish lips turned pale. Only when Torak watched Raine's slightly better, he could heave a sigh of relief. At least she looked better than these past 2 days. What happened to her? Torak gazed at Serafina. The witch didn't answer him immediately, but frowned on her face indicated her answer wouldn't be pleased to be heard. It's complicated, Serafina said after a long silence. She put down Raine's hand and faced Torak with solemn expression. You can't keep her with you. Torak narrowed his eyes dangerously upon hearing Serafina's statement. And what exactly do you mean that I can't keep my mate with me? The idea to leave his mate or being separated were never crossed his mind. What nonsense this witch spurting now. Because being with you has drained her spirit, make her vulnerable. Serafina stood up and walked toward the table. She poured herself a glass of water. She can't stay here as well. Torak let go of Raine as his hand balled in a tight fist. He walked away from Raine's bed, didn't trust himself that he could control the raging beast within him. "Do you mean I am the one who make her suffer like this?" Torak looked at Raine's pale face with brows locked together. What on earth that meant? How he couldn't be with his mate. "It's not exactly like that." Seraphina sat, leaning against the table while sipping another drink. "But her condition is complicated." She spoke more to herself. "Explain," Torak demanded. He couldn't think of another reason why he couldn't be with her. It was absurd. First, she is guardian angel, the purest creature that has strong spirit. But because her form is human, her human body is not able to contain it. Seraphina pointed her chin toward Raine, added that to all of suffers that she had been endured. "You know that. I can see it. The scars from it are quite deep. Her spirit is in the weakest point." Seraphina's eyes turned hazy as she looked at her. "She is in the most vulnerable state, that even a simple curse is able to penetrate her defense. So, how would it get anything to do with me?" "You mean I can't be with my mate?" Even his own question sounded nonsensical in his ears. Seraphina sighed. "No, you didn't really can't get close to her, like I said. It is complicated." His frown deepened, as if it would leave a mark on his face. "I believe I can catch up with your explanation. So, your situation and her is like this." Seraphina put down her glass and walked back to the bed. "You are the alpha. Naturally, all the leaders have a strong aura that is hard to be ignored because you are born with it." The beeping sound from the machine was the prominent sound that echoed inside the ward when Seraphina took a moment to arrange her explanation. "However, for her, as an angel she could feel you, but since her spirit is very weak, it clashes with yours and she can't take it. It makes her condition vulnerable for spiritual attack. Moreover, if you bring her to stay in your pack, which filled with Lycans and werewolves." Torak took a step back. Upon hearing his presence wasn't a good thing for her. "It doesn't mean you can't touch her," Seraphina remarked when she watched the way Torak stood a little bit away from the bed. "But, once again, she is a human. She needs to live with human until she could strengthen her own spirit. You want to say that she falls sick because I've been keeping her in my pack?" Torak's stern gaze pierced Seraphina's eyes. He was trying to see if this which just came up with the story. "It's not like that." She shook her head. "Your mate is in vulnerable state. Spiritually, being with you weaken her already weak spirit, and now there is someone has cursed her. As a result, she couldn't resist it. That is why she ends up like this." Seraphina waved her slender hand to Raine's condition. Torak made a mental note to find out who the person responsible for this. "A curse. What you suggestion?" he asked. "I will bring her with me," Seraphina said solemnly. "What makes you think I will allow you?" Torak's voice turned dangerously low and frosty as he stalked toward her. "Your presence now is not helping her. Until she could stabilize her spirit, you, and your kind better, limited your presence around her." Seraphina brushed a strand of hair away from Raine's face. "Why I have to believe you?" Only God knew how much willpower that Torak needed to restrain himself from ripped the witch apart for suggesting that. "You see yourself how I fixed her." Seraphina shrugged nonchalantly, didn't even bother by the fact Torak's eyes had turned black. "I didn't say that you can't get close to her, just reduce your interaction. And for your information, if you didn't notice yet, I come with my own volition to help." Torak glared at her when she walked past him. "If I can't get close to her, so on what base you can?" It was simply nonsense in his ears. "We're a different kind, Torak. I'm not a shifter like you," she said in matter-of-fact tone. "As a shifter, you have, and mate, how can I say it?" Seraphina tilted her head as if she was thinking about something. "An impure spirit, especially you, who is bathed with blood and brutality." The fact in Seraphina's statement made Torak let out a deep growl as a warning. "I will give you time to think about it thoroughly, but don't forget about her true purpose for being resurrected again." With that last sentence, Seraphina strolled out of the ward, leaving the fumed Lycan that could flip any time. Equals 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 equals. As another night fell, it was completely silent within the VVIP ward. Torak was sitting with back facing the floor-to-ceiling window. He looked exhausted as the frown on his forehead engraved deeply as though it would be his permanent expression. Raine's fever had broke down, and her lips no more the scary color of purple, leaving her complexion pale and unhealthy. But it was much better than 4 days ago, before Seraphina came. Though her fever had subsided, she still not yet regained consciousness even once. Seraphina convinced Torak that Raine was fine. She was put into a sleep so she could recuperate faster, and Torak didn't have another choice than to believe her. Since Seraphina said the shifter's presence didn't help Raine with her recuperation, Torak forbid all Lycans and werewolves to come closer to Raine's ward. He especially hired human bodyguard to guard her ward. Even Raphael and Caleb were not an exception. However, Torak couldn't really leave her alone, therefore most of the time he would stare at her from the furthest part of the room, which was the best that he could do. Moreover, Seraphina said it wasn't really necessary for him to completely stay away from her. "Where will you bring her?" Torak asked Seraphina beside him while looking at the nurse, who was checking on Raine's foredrip. He had come to terms that Raine was needed Seraphina guidance. He didn't want something bad fall upon her, and moreover, how he could accept their condition now that his presence could possibly harm her. "The best place is her birthplace," Seraphina said. Torak narrowed his eyes. "Her birthplace is out of my territory. It would be another trouble." Even in his own territory, Torak couldn't rest assured to leave her by herself, let alone in the place where he wasn't in control. Once his enemies caught a wind about Raine as his mate, she would be put in death sentence. Her life would be more in constant danger. How Torak could allow it? "No, she will not go out of my territory," Torak insisted. His eyes darkened, extremely displeased with Seraphina's suggestion. What the hell with the plan of sending his mate away from him? On top of that, Seraphina chose the place where he had no control of it. Then, she will be like this for a long time. Seraphina pointed her chin toward Raine. "I know you are worried about her, but this is the best that I can offer to you." She shrugged nonchalantly. "And why do you want to help?" There was something fishy about Seraphina's participation in this case. "Are we going back to this topic again?" Seraphina glared at Torak. They had had conversation about this, and she didn't want to have discussing the same thing all over again. However, apparently Torak didn't convince with their last talk. "My relationship with your brother has nothing to do with this. We are over once I knew the moon goddess lifted your curse and bestowed the 3 of you with mate." Seraphina's voice sounded boring. "I deserve better than sharing a male, don't you think?" Upon hearing her rhetorical question, Torak chuckled lightly. This was the first pleasant voice from him after many days shrouded by killing intent. He knew how arrogant Seraphina could be. Like she said, it much better if she left his brother or else this which would stop for nothing. "Good to know that you are in your right mind." Torak strolled across the room when the nurse had finished fix Raine foredrip and sat beside her bed, kissing her forehead. "It's good to know that you finally found your mate. It means so did Jedrek and Kas." Seraphina glanced at the glimmers light of the city, deep in thought. "I will assume you return for good this time." Torak still concerned about Seraphina and his brother relationship after all. They parted way in bad terms. This time Seraphina didn't say anything to answer him. Regardless, Seraphina could have any hidden agenda behind her return for all Torak cared. As long as she didn't do harm on his mate and pack, she could do as she wished. At that time, Raine's eyes fluttered as she let out a small grunt from her trembling lips. Torak caught her movement and anxiously calling Seraphina. "Seraphina, she is awake." Seraphina strolled across the room and sat beside Raine's bed as she held her hand. The warm touch from Seraphina alerted her as she made an attempt to pull her hand from her grasp, her eyebrows locked together in discomfort. Raine had never seen her. Not to mention, this woman's appearance didn't look like a doctor with her short red hair and overly luxurious gown. "It's all right, my love. She is here to help." Only then Raine realized Torak's presence and the spark that came from her another hand that has been holding by him all this while. She turned her head and stared at him through her blurry sight. Everything around her turned into a fuzzy image at this moment. "Torak," Raine rasped out a sound that very weak. He liked it when Raine called out his name, but as far as Torak could remember, every time Raine called his name, it had been always an unpleasant occasion. I am here, my love. Torak caressed her cheeks, and she leaned to his touch. It made his beast slightly appeased after all the tense that they had been through. Seraphina poured a glass of water and gave it to Torak so he could help her drink some liquid to freshen up her drying throat. Afterwards, she called the doctor to check on Raine. The doctor was a human, as well as the two nurses who came with him. Because of Seraphina's warning about Raine's weak spirit, Torak had limited Raine interaction with other Lycans, including himself. He had been keeping his distance all this time and only came to touch her very rarely. It was inconvenient, but it helped her to recovery. So as frustrated as he was about the situation, Torak couldn't complain about it. After some major checkup, they said there was nothing to worry about her condition now. She would recover and would be able to discharge after a week. Let Dr. Lucas know about the result and ask his opinion. Torak told the doctor he needed his own people to make sure that Raine's condition was not in danger anymore, physically. Will do, Mr. Donovan. The doctor smiled politely before he walked out of the room with the two nurses, who kept stealing a glance or two at Torak's direction, seemingly smitten with his charm and mysterious aura around him. How are you feeling, my love? Torak caressed Raine's cheek fondly, feeling her soft skin. Raine felt like she was under the water, disoriented and headache. Everything was fuzzy in her eyes. Her body was like a jelly, and her lower back was sore due to lying down for a long time. She wanted to sit. However, she didn't have much strength to hoist herself up. With hazy mind, she reached out her arms, asking Torak to help her. A tender smile appeared on Torak's lips upon seeing her gesture. How he could endure to be separated from this little creature. He must rack his brain to think of another way. Gingerly, Torak supported her back as he pressed the button to lift the bed. He arranged pillows around her so she would feel comfortable. Throughout the process, Seraphina watched how gentle Torak treated his mate. She remembered how ferocious this Lycan centuries ago. Actually, he was still that way till now. The beast only lied down, not dead. However, no one believed it, if they were looking how devoted this beast to his mate at this moment. Is he also like this to his mate? Seraphina's mind flew to the image of a certain Lycan. Equals 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 equals. After 5 days of good care, Raine's condition became much better. Originally, she was allowed to discharge by now. However, Torak insisted her to stay for another 2 days. When Raine wasn't as muddle-headed as before, the first thing that came up in her mind was how grandeur this hospital ward. She didn't feel like she was in a hospital at all. Instead, it more like a 7-stars hotel, even though she had never been in any rate of hotel before. Another thought was how much money that Torak had spent for her. He was an affluent man. She knew that from the moment he brought her out of the orphan. But to spend his money on her this way, not to mention with her had been unconscious, Torak could put her in regular room, and she would never say a word about it. Was this all worth it? Another thing that came to her understanding was the presence of the woman named Seraphina. Occasionally, she would hold her hand without saying anything. During that moment, Raine would feel numb with a warm sensation that crept from her hand, which she was holding. It was an unpleasant feeling. In contrary, after Seraphina had done that, she felt better, as if she had regained her strength. And the last thing that had bothered her the most was the fact that Torak had been avoiding for being close to her. Actually, Torak was still inside the room. However, instead of being near her, he would sat on the sofa close to the window, busying himself with a stack of doc that met. Only if Raine walked toward him, then he would urge her to go back to lie down on the bed. Not to mention he was more cautious and careful when he was with her, more than before. Another small thing that she realized was the fact she had not seen Raphael and Caleb even for once since she regained consciousness. As long as she remembered, both of them were rarely leaving Torak's side. What actually had happened? What is it, my love? Torak kissed Raine's beautiful eyes as they were looking at him absent-mindedly. Currently, he was cuddling, lying down with her on the sofa beside the floor-to-ceiling window while looking at the drizzle rain outside, fogging their view from the city below. It was still afternoon, 1:43 p.m., but the gloomy cloud didn't allow a ray of the sunlight escaped. Thunder and lightning appeared at the other further side of the sky, behind a tall building, giving an ominous feeling. Raine shifted to find comfort in Torak's embrace while he adjusted the blanket around her. It was the moment when Torak hoped time would freeze and let him relish his mate's presence for a little bit longer. At this time, nothing was matter anymore for him. He had given Raphael auto ration to deal with the matter regarding the dragon people and their company takeover. Raine used his arms as a pillow, while Torak's other hand played with her hair, one of his favorite things to do when he was Raine near him. "Where's Call and Raph?" Raine's voice was so soft like a breeze wind when she asked him. She had started to talk again, but it was only with him. While with the other people like the doctor and nurses, she chose to remain silent or used her iPad to communicate. "Why are you asking them?" Torak slightly frowned, didn't like when she was asking another man, even though he knew what she meant. She must have realized it by now. "You are always with them," Raine whispered, snuggled deeper to his chest. "I will call them if you want." Torak found it difficult to explain the situation to her. It would be the day after tomorrow. Seraphina would bring her back to her birthplace, but Raine was still in the dark. The idea of being separated from her didn't please the Alpha either. "No, just asking." Raine shook her head, didn't want to trouble him. But before Raine could talk further, a sudden sound of the door being opened with unnecessary forces echoed inside the room, startling Raine as she jolted to sit. She was very self-conscious if there was someone else near her, as she was too shy to let other people saw her cuddling with Torak. Meanwhile, Torak was really annoyed with the sudden interruption. His blue ocean eyes were looking at Seraphina, who strolled inside the room with bright saffron yellow fur coats that complemented her lime green eyes. She was too doll up for Torak's taste. "Can we talk straight to the business?" Seraphina crossed her feet and leaned her back against the sofa as she put on airs. Her features was very radiating for Raine. The girl lowered her head like she always did when she felt intimidated, while she felt Torak wrapped his arm around her waist protectively. Torak gave Seraphina a warning glare that the woman ignored it completely. "You." Seraphina pointed her chin at Raine arrogantly. "Will live with me in your hometown. We will go the day after tomorrow." Seraphina's short declaration earned a low growl from Torak as Raine whipped her head to look at the woman straight in the eyes. "After many days, finally you have courage to look at me." Mockery was clear to hear from the way Seraphina said it. "Watch your mouth, witch," Torak said through gritted teeth as his hand balled into a fist. If it wasn't for Raine's sake, the witch would have been thrown out of the ward through the window. "I don't know what is wrong with you, but I can't find reasonable reason for you to keep this matter until now." Seraphina had run out of her patience. She couldn't stand the way Torak spoiled Raine and kept this issue secret until today, while their departure was so close. The way Torak treated her wouldn't do any good for her chance to survive. She had to find her own way through this struggle time. Patience would never be the witch's forte. Hence it put her on edge when she looked at Torak pampered Raine in such a way. Raine looked at Torak with apprehensive eyes, her lips slightly open, but nothing that she could say. Her body was trembling when she realized that Torak would send her away. "Get out!" Torak barked at Seraphina. His eyes turned black because of anger. He would let Raine know about this eventually, but not in this way. She would misunderstand his intention if Seraphina put the matter in such way. Raine in his embrace startled when she heard Torak shouted furiously at the woman in front of them. And to her surprise, that woman didn't even bother with Torak harsh words. She looked at Raine with impassive eyes and strolled out of the ward indifferently. Only when a sound of the door had closed, Torak sighed agitatedly. He needed 2 seconds before he could face the fear on Raine's expression. And the next thing that Raine said almost broke his soul painfully. "You don't want me anymore?" Raine asked. Her voice was very soft, only barely a whisper. Tears had threatened to spill on the corner of her eyes, but she bit her lips stubbornly to hold them back. She didn't want to go back to her hometown. It was a nightmare. "Of course that is not the case, my love." Torak put his thumb under her chin to release her pale lips from her teeth. She would harm herself if she kept doing that. "Of course I want you. You are the only person that I want." Torak pulled her closer and pushed her head softly toward his chest, caressing her trembling back. Inwardly, he cursed Seraphina to bring such a pain on Raine by her words and made her misunderstood this situation. though he knew what that which said was true. Torak was aware that he couldn't procrastinate the explanation of this matter forever. Moreover, it was a good thing for having Seraphina at this time to help Raine to find out about herself. It could help her to heal her spirit faster under the witch surveillance. But her way to announce it didn't make things better. However, the problem was the location that Seraphina chose. That wasn't his territory. In another simple words, danger. Raine sobbed silently against Torak's chest, tainted his shirt with her tears. She really didn't want to go there. Anywhere would be better than there. Torak. Raine lifted her head. Her teary eyes were looking her mate with hopelessness, and that made his beast aggravated. Both of them didn't like to see her tears. Clumsily, Torak wiped away the tears that tracing down on her cheeks, but they kept falling. Yes, my love. Can I not go there? Her lips were trembling when she was saying that. Please, anywhere but not there. Another tears escaped her eyes, fell on the back of Torak's hand. Torak couldn't bear to see her pleading like that, especially for something that he couldn't grant. His throat suddenly dried as no word could be spoken. For a long time, Torak just held her until the rain outside the window ceased and tears from her eyes stopped to fall. My love, there is something that I want to tell you. Will you hear me first? Torak caressed her back and held her tight, kept her warm in his arms. After that, if you still don't want to go, I will not force you. How he could bear to let her go to the place that she didn't want, not to mention the danger that lurked around. For now, he only wanted her to know her own situation, to make things easier for her to adapt. He could feel Raine nodded her head on his chest and sighed deeply before started to speak. My love, like you've already known, there is another world beside your human world. Also, there is this thing that we call spirit. Raine raised her head. Her swollen eyes looked at Torak questioningly. In my world, there are many supernatural creatures, charms and curses. You can always ward off charms and curses as long as you have a strong spirit. Torak stopped to let his word seep in. Raine blinked, fluttering her long wet lashes as her sob had subsided. She gave Torak her full attention. Without her knowing, the way she looked at him made Torak in daze, drowning himself into her charm. In your case, your spirit is very weak to the point you will be sick only by get close to me for a long time. Lives surrounded by supernatural creatures also doesn't help your case. Torak tried to explain it carefully. He didn't want Raine to feel like no one wanted her. She had felt that way for years. Raine was tightening her clutch on Torak's shirt. You should be aware by now that I have many enemies. They will harm you the same way they try to harm me. Torak leaned over and kissed her cheek as he whispered to her ear. And I can't let that to happen, my love. There was a faint trace of fear in the way Torak said his last sentence. You were sick because someone cursed you and your spirit couldn't take it. Torak didn't go down to the detail, but that also the right words to put her situation. Raine snuggled to the crook of Torak's shoulder, seeking for comfort. That was the reason why you will send me away. As she whispered, Torak could feel the warm liquid wet at his neck. Don't say it in that way. I will never let you go if it's not for your safety's sake. With my weak spirit, I can't be with you. You will suffer if you stay with me, and I can't bear to see you in pain. Will Seraphina help me? Yes, she will. It wasn't only a place, it was the place where her parents had been killed, the place where she had been charged for 3 years in mental institution and had lived as orphanage. When she thought she was free from that place, she needed to return. How cruel that could be. I'm afraid. She said truthfully, even her voice was shaking. Don't. I will be by your side. And then Raine started sobbing again. Her raspy voice echoed in Torak's ears, reverberating to his being. Equals 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 equals. The day until Raine's departure was uneventful. Torak kept her company in every passing second. Along that time, Seraphina didn't talk too much to Raine if it was not something necessary. Actually, she acted that way from the first time they met. She had gotten used with being ignored and had even experienced something worse, so it didn't really bother Raine. However, on the day of her departure, Torak couldn't accompany her to the airport because Seraphina adamant to not let him. She had a strong argumentation for that, though. You want to announce to the whole world that she is your mate? That she is leaving your territory and will enter your enemy's land? I am afraid she will be dead, even before the plane landed. Seraphina berated Torak harshly. Even Raphael and Caleb, who was there at that time, tempted to salute this, which for being able to stay intact after a disrespect act. If this someone else, they would be dead before they could catch the next breath. But Torak's mood only turned gloomy and said nothing. With Torak's identity in both worlds, it would be uproar if Raine's identity was revealed. Before, only a few human who saw her in person when Torak brought her to the meeting, while those newspapermen didn't have any idea how she looks like. Generally speaking, Raine's identity was still a secret for the outside world until today. This was an advantage for her, and Seraphina very adamant to keep it that way. I will come often, Torak said before let her out of the ward. Don't come often, Seraphina chided even before Torak finished his words. Get her out. Torak roared angrily, holding Raine's body against his to keep his mind sane from this irritating witch. This witch has been breathing on his skin since the moment she came. Let's wait outside. Caleb tugged Seraphina's right arm as he half dragged her out of the room. Raphael followed behind them. Seraphina was wearing yellow jumper with blue jeans and golden black sling bag. She looked fresh and young. No one would have thought she has lived for centuries. Once Seraphina left, and it was only the two of them, Torak let out an irritated breath as he rested his forehead against Raine's shoulder. I will come to you, he said firmly. It wasn't a promise, it was a determination. Equals 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 equals. Torak had made an arrangement for everything. He bought a house in Seraphina's name, so it would be difficult for someone to draw a link back to him, arranged new identity for Raine. Thus no one knew she came from an orphan and also didn't appear in the airport. Raine was waiting their plane with Seraphina was sitting next to her, playing with her phone, when suddenly she bristled. Your mate is too much. Seraphina sat up straight and glared at her screen phone as if that gadget had wronged her greatly. I can't stand this. Seraphina bolted up and walked further to calling someone that Raine assumed it would be Torak at the end of the line. Curiously, Raine fished out her own phone and typed Torak's name. There were thousands of articles about him, but in the recent feed, there was news about him that managed to be a trending topic in less than an hour. It was about him who bought the Medici Corp. The Medici was a respected family, where they family's company specialized in legal field. But it wasn't the shocking news. The thing that made all those businessmen shook their head and puzzled was because the Medici Corp was rumored on the verge of bankruptcy. If Torak insisted to buy it, he wouldn't see profit until 1 year ahead. That was what people said in online. During that time, Torak needed to dig his hoard deeper to keep the company state afloat. But those things wasn't Torak's main focus. He was capable to provide 10 more companies like that. His real goal was to use the Medici Corp as a reason for him to stay in the same country as Raine. If Torak couldn't stay because of his alpha title would count him as a trespasser, then he would use business as the reason for him to trespass. He is coming. There was something warm spreading in Raine's heart as she read the article. Meanwhile, at the corner, Seraphina's face had turned red as her eyes glared viciously at the innocent display board. She clearly bristled to her phone. I declare to you that woman must not depend upon the protection of man, but must be taught to protect herself, and there I take my stand. Susan B. Anthony. Seraphina and Raine arrived at their destination after hours of flight. During the trip, they didn't talk at all, if it wasn't a necessary case. It wasn't because Raine was having a hard time to communicating with Seraphina, but the witch didn't really try to make small talk with her also. They both looked like strangers to one another. Probably before they could start something, the first thing that they needed to work on was the way they interact with each other. Raine thought Seraphina was still very mad because of Torak's sudden arrangement to open his new business plan in the same country as her. She could see Seraphina clenched and unclench her fist a couple of times and breathe deeply in order to calm her tense nerves. Called her thoughtless, but Raine enjoyed the sight of Seraphina fumed with anger. She has been very annoying since the first time they met, and now Torak gave her another headache and annoyed her back. So how could Raine not be consoled by this? However, she couldn't let the witch know about this, or else her days ahead wouldn't be good. Raine kept walking 2 steps behind Seraphina, as her presence was so intimidating. If she could choose, she wanted to be everywhere except beside her. Her self-conscious kept reminding her how uncomfortable she was. "Can you walk faster? I don't want to be bothered looking for you if you are lost." Seraphina hissed at her and looked at Raine, who was shorter than her, through her shoulder, disdainfully. "Torak really has spoiled you too much until you can't even move your ass faster than my cat." The harsh comment made Raine's body fidgeted nervously as unpleasant memories flew back in her head. Would it be the same as before? "Raise your chin and look at me." Seraphina suddenly stopped walking and crossed her slender arms in front of her chest provocatively. She was venting out her anger toward Torak to his mate. This, which was about a head taller than Raine, and with her red hair, it was like her head was flaring with flame, like Medusa, but with flame. Raine tugged the strips of her backpack nervously as she stopped a bit further from her. "Come closer to me, or I assure you, you will not like the things that I will do next." Seraphina warned her. She has a temper that was worse than her stepsister, Belinda. Moreover, she wasn't the patient type either. Raine was very aware about what she could do, but would she do something atrocious in front of 1,000 people? She glanced at her surroundings secretly. They were in the airport, and lots of people milling around with their suitcase. Not far from them, there were guards and airport police. She would be safe, wouldn't she? But before Raine could decide what she would do, she felt her feet moved forcefully without her consent. She looked around in panic when she wasn't able to stop herself to move closer towards Seraphina. Only when Raine was standing in front of her, her feet stopped moving, and by didn't move, her feet literally were not able to move an inch from her spot now. Raine's body started to tremble as her heart called out the only name that crossed her mind every time she felt insecure. Torak. Tears began to well up in the corner of her eyes as fear crept in. "Raise your head and look at me." Seraphina hissed viciously, and like her feet, her head and eyes moved without her consent to meet Seraphina's glaring one. It scared Raine terribly. "Do you really think that I can't do anything in public area like this?" She waved her hand to her surrounding and scoffed. "Think again." The feeling of being controlled was awful, and Raine didn't like it a bit. She was used with harsh words and physical abuse, but not this type of abuse. "When I talk to you, you have to look at me in the eyes like this, understand?" Seraphine was squinted her eyes dangerously at Raine, like a predator stared at their prey. Raine wanted to nod her head, but she couldn't move a muscle. "Answer me," Seraphina ordered Raine sternly. "Understood." Raine's voice was barely a whisper when she answered the witch as tear of fear was rolling down on her cheek. Looking at her tears, Seraphina scorned with derision. "Cry?" She raised her eyebrows. "That is the only thing that you can do? Do you really think your tears can stop them from killing you?" Raine wasn't sure whom Seraphina referred to by the mention of them, but they must be those creatures that have been hunting her for years. "If you can't even raise your head to face me, how do you expect you will survive in this place? Out of your mate's territory. You think Torak will always be here for you, in every dangerous situation to save your life." Seraphina's words were very hard to hear, though there was truth in it. Raine knew Seraphina was right, but her method was too rude and abrupt for her. Raine needed time to overcome her trauma, and knowing she had to return to her own nightmare and face the horror in her life again didn't help her case at all. Don't wait for any men to save your ass. You have to save your own ass in order to survive. Understand? Understood. Raine blinked her eyes rapidly to hold back her tears as she tried to gulp down the fear that went up to her throat. Her face flushed with the color of red as her body trembled. If Torak was there, the word of mad wouldn't be able to describe his emotion. Unfortunately, he wasn't there. "It will be the first and the last time you ever cry in front of me," Seraphine remarked sharply. After saying those harsh words, Seraphina released Raine. She didn't have intention to hurt her. However, the witch really got irritated if someone started to cry and showed any kind of weakness. That was her least favorite things. In the other hand, Raine gripped on the strip of her backpack, tightened as she bit down her lips. She looked around, trying to find a way to escape from Seraphina. She was so terrified by her, something in her told Raine that Seraphina wouldn't go easy on her, whether it was because her duty to help her became stronger or to vent out her anger toward Torak. Neither would end up good. Don't waste your time to think that you can do that. Seraphina was facing Raine again with impatient look on her face. Once you do that, and I catch you, no mercy for you. She talked in low and soft tones, but the meaning behind it spoke more volumes. I will cut off your hair. Raine gasped loudly. Somehow she believed that she would do exactly what she said. On top of that, Seraphina had the ability and the cruelness to do that. The little angel rubbed her eyes roughly before her tears fell on her cheeks. The witch said she didn't like to see her crying. Who knew what she would do if she saw this? The airport filled with many people, but no one paid attention or cared enough to watch what was happening with the two women as they minded their own business. Raine took step by step with great effort to follow Seraphina, as if her feet suddenly weighed a ton each. When they walked, someone suddenly approached Seraphina. He was a young man in black suit with tan skin and a smile on his lips that seemingly never faded. He looked like a man in the middle of his 20s. Miss Seraphina, and his amber eyes landed on Raine. Mrs. Donovan, right? My name is Jack. I will be your chauffeur. The young man introduced himself. What do you mean, Mrs. Donovan? Call her by her name. Seraphina's voice raised a few octaves upon hearing how Jack addressed Raine. But she is the Alpha's mate. Jack stated the fact without faltered even under Seraphina's sharp gaze, his smile still etched on his full lips. For him, as a werewolf, mate would be the forever one. Whether they had married or not, their woman would be the last woman for them. Or, which one do you prefer? Mrs. Donovan or Mississippi Raine? Jack asked Raine politely. Jack had heard a little bit about their future Luna's personality. Caleb told him that their Luna was soft-hearted and a bit shy, but in his eyes, shy couldn't describe her. Raine had a problem more than being shy. Raine looked at her, intertwined her own fingers. She lowered her head only until the tip of her nose and her lips that could be seen. Call her Raine. Seraphina was almost screaming in her frustration. She had told Torak to keep low profile and stop doing stupid things to spoil his mate, but he just couldn't listen. Because in Torak's eyes, sending someone to pick them up for the airport didn't count as a fancy thing. Maybe they needed to talk more detail about does and don'ts rule. Ignoring Seraphina's angry tone, Jack kept looking at Raine, waiting for her answer. So, Raine startled a bit when Seraphina talked. She hastily pulled out her phone and typed something before she showed it to Jack. On the screen, there were only 3 simple words. Just Raine, please. Jack smiled. Okay. Raine, do you ready to go home? He asked softly while giving back her phone. Raine slightly raised her head when she heard the way Jack spoke to her. She glanced at Seraphina's impatient expression before she nodded her head slowly. Over here, please. Jack led them to the black car that parked not too far from them. After the 3 of them got into the car, Seraphina told Raine to take a seat beside Jack, who was driving, while she was sitting alone in the back seat. Her reason was because she needed more space. Raine didn't feel offended for that, as she also preferred to stay as far away as she could from Seraphina. When they just drove for a few minutes, Seraphina's phone rang. The name that popped out from her phone didn't make her bad mood better. Torak, there are a lot of things that we need to talk. Seraphina shouted at her phone. Where's my mate? At the other side of the phone, Torak demanded. No, I will give the phone to your mate if you stop doing this. Seraphina yelled and glared at the traffic jam in front of them. Are you inside the car? Torak asked impatiently. Yes, in this. However, before Seraphina could say something, the line had cut off. The next second, another phone was ringing. It was Jack's. Jack only glanced at the name that appeared on his screen phone before he gave it directly to Raine. Apparently, it wasn't only Seraphina who owned the phone inside the car. Jack wanted to laugh on this. My love, are you all right? Torak's soft tone was heard the moment Raine picked up the phone. Raine nodded, the habit of hers, before she realized that Torak couldn't see her, and then said in low voice, Yes. There was silence afterwards before Torak said, I love you, my angel. We will meet soon. And the line was cut off. Raine was surprised when Torak said that, because Seraphina would flip out if he did come. She had warned him not to meet her, but apparently the Alpha didn't take it well. Whatever it would be, Torak's words still managed to warm Raine's heart as a tear trickled down from her eyes, which she wiped it hastily. It has not even been a week, but she missed him. Equals 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 equals. Inside a luxurious room, Torak was staring at his phone before abruptly stood up and gave a sudden order. Arrange a meeting with the Medici family. When? Caleb caught out of guard by the sudden order. Tomorrow, Torak replied curtly before he went out of the room, leaving Caleb with his jaw dropped open. Raph, is the Alpha starting to become crazy? We can't do that. The Medici family is living not in our territory. There are a lot of things that we should do first to announce our visit. Caleb cried to Raphael beside him. If Torak wanted to meet the Medici family tomorrow, then at least they should leave tonight. And Caleb needed to an extra job to make their visit wasn't count as trespassing the other territory. The time was so tight if Caleb has to arrange this meeting. Raphael looked at Caleb helplessly. Can you change his mind? Caleb shook his head. Of course not. Can you defy his order? No. Can you say no to him? Raphael asked again, crossing his arms in front of his broad chest. No. Stop complaining and just do it then. Caleb. Jack brought Raine and Seraphina to their new residence. It was an old-fashioned 8-story apartment building with a little bit touch of medieval style. In the entrance hallway, there was a big reception table with a beautiful receptionist sitting elegantly there. Jack walked toward her and made a little bit conversation with the receptionist. She was blushing and giggled upon hearing whatever Jack told her, while Seraphina was too busy with her phone to stop Jack from infusing his charm to the poor lady. Raine was sitting on the sofa while waiting for Jack to retrieve the keys of their flat. Seraphina was sitting next to her. She was staring at her phone disappointedly. She would never be able to receive Torak's call because Seraphina had thrown away her SIM card before they take off. That was why Torak called Seraphina to speak with Raine instead of calling her directly. It was 10 minutes later when Jack finally finished with his flattering words and got the key for them. He winked at the lady receptionist when he turned to face Raine and Seraphina. Let's go to see your flat. Jack reached out his hand to help Raine to carry her backpack, but shook her head and mouthed, "It's okay." Jack smiled softly and carried their suitcase instead. There was one porter who followed them to their flat, pushed a trolley to carry all of their belongings. Their flat was in 11th floor. In this floor, there were 4 doors that led to different flats. Seraphina and Raine got flat number 111, while Jack 112. He would live next to them. This time, Seraphina didn't complain as she agreed with the selected apartment building. This place was pleasant and modest, and moreover this met her request. Your room will be there. Seraphina pointed the second room to Raine when they entered. This flat consists with 2 bedrooms, 1 living room, 1 bathroom, and a small kitchen. Their flat was a fully furnished one, so they didn't need to add anything significant. Raine entered the room that Seraphina had pointed to her and found that she loved this room immediately. This room was very simple with a single bed near the window and with white cover sheet and a bedside table with 2 drawers, which also in color of white. And beside a big cabinet, there was a standing mirror. Raine's room was so simple, but this was a perfect room for her. She walked inside and put her backpack on her bed and looked around her room with fascinating. On the top of bedside table, there was a red tulip on a glass vase. Its color was so daring and gave off an indifferent beauty and simplicity. Raine touched its petals with her fingertips. Could this be Torak, who asked someone to put it here? Or it was only part of decoration? So cheesy. Raine startled when she heard Seraphina's sarcastic tone. Who knows how long she has been standing at the doorway, but her eyes locked on the red tulip on the bedside table, spitefully. Come outside, there is something we need to talk. I have allergic with flour. Seraphina mumbled her last words acrimoniously. Raine glanced at the red tulip before she went outside of her room and closed the door. Apparently, Jack had left, and it was only the 2 of them. Seraphina was sitting on the sofa when Raine appeared and took a seat across of her. The incident at the airport when she was controlling her still etched in her memory. Thus the girl was very afraid to be near her. Seraphina tilted her head when she saw Raine's timid gestures. She needed more than patience to stand this kind of person. The witch hated Raine's timidity. She didn't really care about her trauma or dreadful experience that she had gone through, because everyone has it. She also has her own share, and she didn't suck.u.mb on her fear. But Serafina forgot that not everyone has the same problem as her neither. They had her supercilious attitude. I will make the rule, and you will do as I say. Understand? Serafina opened the conversation with that statement. Raine didn't like it when Serafina tried to control her mentally or physiologically. She had enough with that when she was in the mental hospitality. However, she couldn't voice out her rejection openly, and Serafina didn't need her agreement for that, as she assumed everything was under her control. Take a look at this. Serafina put down 3 brochures on the table between them. These are colleges near this place, and you will start a new semester in 4 months. I don't care what majors you will take, and I think your mate also didn't care much about it. Raine reached the 3 brochures and checked on it. There were various majors that they offered, but the problem was, Raine fished out her phone and was about to type something when Serafina snatched it away and crushed it into a dust. When I talk to you, I want you to answer me, Serafina said viciously. Her eyes bore onto Raine's. Talk. Raine clenched her fist to calm herself. She opened her mouth, but there was not a single word that could come out. She felt suffocating. Talk. Serafina yelled sternly. Raine bit her lower lips as she was trying hard to produce the words. High school. Across from her, Serafina knitted her eyebrows. Talk clearly. High school, not graduated yet. Raine stammered, stumbled with her words as her body trembling. Fortunately, Serafina didn't ask her to repeat that. I have thought about that. During these 4 months, there will be a tutor who will come regularly, so you can take the final exam like the other high school students. Raine nodded and then hastily added, yes, before Serafina flipped out again. And every once a month, I don't want you to disturb me. You are not allowed to knock or call my name during that time, no matter how urgent the situation. Serafina warned her. No matter what you will hear, don't disturb me. Understood. Though Raine didn't understand why she had to do that, she still nodded her head and whispered, understood. Serafina's eyes stared at Raine for a few more seconds before she continued with other trivial rule, like, Raine wasn't allowed to go outside of the flat without Serafina's permission. Raine would be the one who would cook something for them to eat because Serafina couldn't do that. Raine would be the one who would clean up their flat because Serafina was too busy to do it, but she wasn't allowed to enter her room. Serafina made sure that she had repeated that many times. And another rules that made Raine scrunched her brows in confusion. Basically, it would always be Raine who would do the core work, as Serafina's excuse would go back and forth between busy and she couldn't do it. Actually, Raine didn't mind to do it, as she had done worse thing than that in the past. But she wondered when she could meet Torak again. Serafina seemingly had planned to separate them as long as she could. When you graduate from the college, or after you manage to revive your power. That was what her reply when Raine asked about meeting Torak. Her black obsidian's eyes widened when she heard that. Graduate from the college would take, at least, for years, and to revive her power, she didn't even know if she has it. What was Serafina's mean by power? Lifting an object without touch it? Shot fire from her eyes? Produce water from her fingertips? What power? Raine tilted her head, asking in low voice. She even didn't know if her question sounded stupid or what, but she needed to know what Serafina wanted to do with her. She told Torak that she would help Raine to get better and for her to be able to stand against the enemy, but all she had done was made Raine afraid of her. I don't know, you tell me. Serafina shrugged nonchalantly. Every guardian angel has its own charm. I don't know what that is. Some experience will be needed to figure that out. She mumbled and then stood up, walked toward her room, leaving the confused Raine behind her. Equals 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 equals. It was very early in the morning when a private jet landed at the airport. Even the sun has not shone yet. However, the activity in the airport was as busy like always. Torak was wearing black shirt under his leather-brown jacket and black sunglasses perched on his nose. Walked beside him was his beta and gamma along with the other 10 Lycans. That small group apparently drew people attention, especially from women. They would take another look and even stared at them bluntly. That was a good sight to behold in this early, boring morning. Fortunately, that didn't last for a long time, as they had their own private exit and luxurious cars that had been waiting for them. Greetings, Alpha Torak. Someone suddenly appeared a few meters away from Torak's group. Simultaneously, all of the Lycans turned their head toward the direction of the voice and found a man, with skin that almost looked translucent, was staring at Torak with a warm smile hung on his lips. Torak didn't answer his greeting, but he didn't move to open the car door either. He was waiting for the other person to explain his appearance. "You are so parsimonious with your word like always," that man remarked, but even so, it didn't falter his smile. "What do you want?" Torak asked. His voice was so deep and calm, but somehow gave off an authority and impatient. The other man chuckled lightly. Seemingly, he wasn't the type that would like to get down straight to his main point, while the other hand, Torak didn't have much patience to deal with this. Seeing the other man was still reluctant to talk, Torak opened the car door and was about to leave, when that man all of a sudden stopped chuckling and his voice turned serious. "I came to invite you to my place," that man blurted out, realizing that Torak would leave. "The last time you were here, you came and went so fast, I didn't even have time to greet you. This time your beta gave me a short notice about your arrival, and here I am, waiting to greet you." The man was half winning toward the Alpha and opened his hands to emphasize his words. Torak glanced at him as his ocean blue eyes slightly became darker. Realizing the situation would get out of hand, Raphael stepped forward. He stood between the two men. "Andromalius." The man nodded solemnly. "Yes, that is me. We have notified you about our arrival, and, as you know, we came here for business. There was nothing to do with our realm." Raphael said impassively. "I got your point." Andromalius took 2 steps closer. "But the last time you were here, I lost one person in my territory." Andromalius was waiting for the reaction of Torak after hearing his words, but his expression remained unreadable. The Alpha held his eyes with undecipherable emotion. No one could tell whether he was surprised that Andromalius knew about this, or he didn't even care about that, because that wasn't something important for him. She was a girl from an orphanage. Andromalius took another step forward. And surprisingly, when I checked there, no one could remember her face. Not a single soul could tell how she looks like. "Your point is?" Raphael's voice remained calm and composed. He knew that, because Torak had ordered to do something with the people in the orphanage. "The only information that I got from there was the girl's name is Raine." Andromalius tilted his head and looked at Torak through Raphael's shoulders. "Why did you take the girl away? What that girl means to you?" The Alpha had never done this before, and he wouldn't do that if there was not anything important in her. This fact alone had tickled his curiosity. Torak grabbed Raphael's shoulder and pulled him back as he faced Andromalius directly. "Put your nose somewhere else, Andromalius. You will not like it when I lost my patience." Torak made sure that his opponent could hear his voice clearly as he emphasized every syllable of his words. "I don't have much of it." Torak's black eyes stared at Andromalius, washed away the smile on his smug face. "You are indeed the supreme Alpha with the biggest territory, but here is not your land." Andromalius hissed as a black snake crept his way up and perched on his shoulder. "I will make it mine if you keep a pier in front of me." Torak warned him, and he always meant his word. Fulbright City would bath with blood the moment Torak determined to expand his territory. "You can't threaten me in my own territory, Alpha." The snake on his shoulder hissed with him when he talked. "I wasn't threatening you. That was a warning." His black eyes were like a deep whirlpool that could suck any soul into it. Andromalius smirked and took 2 steps back. He knew how dangerous this creature in front of him, or else the moon goddess herself wouldn't put curse on him for the sin that his brothers and he had done. "Enjoy your visit." Andromalius gave another polite smile before he turned around and walked away. A man approached Andromalius when he had walked far enough from Torak's earshot. "Andromalius." The way he talked akin to snake that hissed to his prey. "Find out who is the girl." Andromalius got in the car and let the other man to drive it. "Got it," the man said while he started the engine, The car came to life with a quiet whine, then began to purr. It was a rare case that Torak put his interest in another creature. Not to mention she was only a weak, poor human girl. He saw a piece of news about when Torak left the hotel last time with a girl in his arms, though no one could manage to see her face, but it created quite an uproar. There must be something more about the girl named Raine, and Andromalius determined to find out about it. On the other side of the road, Torak stared at the Jeep Wrangler that slowly left with dark eyes. His eyes didn't return into the initial color, even when he faced Raphael and Caleb. "Put your eyes on him," he said in eerie, cold tone. "Yes, Alpha." Both of them replied simultaneously. "It wouldn't be a good beginning." Equals 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 equals. For days after Raine resided in this new environment, Seraphina has been so busy with her own matter and neglected her. She would be off and went out somewhere. Of course, she would never tell Raine where she would go. However, Raine didn't complain about it. Actually, it was a good thing for her. Sometimes, Seraphina could be so stern, and to be around her was so tense. Seraphina said her home tutor would come next week. Until then, Raine had a lot of free time, and she spent it in front of the television. This wasn't because she interested to watch any movie, but these 3 days, Torak frequently made an appearance in business program about his forthcoming project that would absorb a lot of manpower. His project received full support from the government. Apparently, beside joint venture with the Medici, Torak had determined to settle his influence in this country too, rooted his position in business world. The Alpha indeed will go to any lengths to be close to you, Luna. Jack clicked his tongue when he watched the news. He brought a plate full with chicken wings with him and handed it over to Raine. Seraphina wasn't home. She's been leaving the apartment since morning, and now it's already 4:45 p.m., and both Raine and Jack was watching evening news. Raine took a bite of the chicken wings. After these 4 days, she was used to Jack's presence. He was like Caleb, but more mature than him. He is doing a business. Raine muttered. It was heartwarming to know someone would do something beyond reason and convention only to be near the other person, but what Torak had done was way too extreme for Raine to believe that his reason solely because of her. Business? Jack looked at Raine incredulously. Alpha will not do any business here. He doesn't like the owner of this territory, he explained while watching the news. On the screen, the camera caught a glimpse of Torak when he was about to enter his car. Apparently, he had just met with one of the ministers in the government. "So, why did he do it?" Raine asked timidly. "Because of you, of course." Jack tilted his head and knitted his eyebrows together. "Raine, you still don't grasp the concept of mate, do you?" Raine didn't answer that, but she averted her eyes and put her focus on the chicken wings on her lap. Torak had told her about that, but like what Jack had guessed, she still didn't really grasp the idea of mate. With time, you'll understand it better. There was no better way to explain it, because for some people, their explanation would sound nonsense. No longer after that, Jack's phone rang, and he picked it up. "Cal." He said the other person's name and went silent. Apparently, Caleb was giving him a short instruction and hung up after Jack's reply. "I got it." Raine was staring at Jack upon hearing Caleb's name was being mentioned, her eyes as if asked him what happened when he hung up the phone. "The Alpha wants to meet you, but he couldn't come here. So we will go and see him. What do you say, Luna?" Jack said with teasing tone laced in his voice. His happy-go-lucky face was smiling brightly. He knew that Raine has long missed him. Raine's face lightened up immediately, but then it dimmed. But, Seraphina said, she was not allowed to step out of the apartment. "Well," Jack scratched the back of his head. "I can call back and say that, if that's what you want." "No." Raine shook her head, and the smile returned to her face. "Let's go." This was the first time for Jack to see the bright smile on Raine's lips. She looked so adorable with her black hair framed her small face. Her bang had gotten longer and almost covered her eyes. "I will get my jacket," Raine said before she dashed toward her room. She was like a child who got an early birthday gift. Just now Jack realized that Raine would be much more talkative when she was happy. He didn't know why Caleb said that they couldn't find the apartment when he was the one who had reserved it for them. Caleb's voice on the phone sounded as if he was upset about it. It didn't take Raine long time before she appeared again with her brown hooded parka that made her look more smaller, as though the jacket drowned her. Jack didn't know why Raine often wanted to hide herself. She was a beautiful young girl, and she shouldn't act that way. Many girls in her age would like to show the world how many curves on their body that they have, at least the girls that Jack knew, and that meant the option was only limited to the party girls. Make sure you cover your face, Raine, Jack remarked casually. As a response, Raine pulled out a black mask from her pocket and waved it in front of Jack while grinning. She was so lovable when she did that, with her eyes were shining brightly. Ugh. Out of the blue, Jack felt he was like a brother who was about to take his little sister to her first date. All right, let's go, Smarty. Jack picked the car key and went ahead to the BS and T where their car was parked, with Raine tail behind him. Equals. Raine thought they would directly meet Torak at the appointed place, but it had been an hour since they were roaming around the city, and Caleb kept ordering to change the direction. What happened? Raine asked Jack beside her, her expression slightly disappointed. She kept looking out of the window, hoping she could see Torak somewhere. Apparently, there are many people following him, Jack said as they took another turn after the traffic light. I can't meet him, Raine asked in broken tone. Don't worry, we will find out the way, Jack assured Raine. It wasn't only Raine who was disappointed, but Torak was really pissed off by those human who had been following him since he left the government building. Torak was sitting at the back seat of his car, closed his eyes as he clenched his jaw tightly. Before, Torak was about to go directly to the apartment. His men had secured the street and made sure it was safe for him to go without being noticed. However, strangely, Raphael wasn't able to find a way to go there, which Torak assumed it was because Serafina had put an odd spell around the area that kept them away. In the end, those paparazzi and news reporter caught up with them. Not only that, Torak's hunter reported there was around 3 unknown creatures were following him. Torak was so close to explode. It was almost a week since the last time he saw Raine. Neither he could hear her voice, and now his wolf was on edge. So did he. Every time he tried to talk to her, the line was suddenly cut off, or there was no voice that came out from the other phone. He really tempted to kill that witch. Torak knew Serafina really enjoyed this. After all, he has known her for centuries. There was a time when she was the only female who could get close to the 3 Donovan's brother. However, it was a very old story. Tell Jack to bring my Luna to the West Base T of Sunrise Mall. I will meet him there. Torak's hoarse voice sounded from the back seat. But how can you go there, Torak? We cannot. Before Raphael could finish his words, Torak had opened the car door at the intersection and turned into his big white wolf. Alpha. Both Raphael and Caleb yelped at the same time as Raphael hit the brake. Keep moving. Torak mind, linked his beta and gamma and added to the warrior who came with him. Kill all the creatures that follow me. 3 cars that flanked Torak's stopped at the same time as 5 men shifted into their wolf form and followed their alpha. In humans' eyes, they only saw the 3 cars stopped all of a sudden and the door swung open, but no one came out from inside the car. Afterward, the door shut close and they drove away again. Torak dashed in 4 legs toward the direction of the Sunrise Mall. As he shifted and his senses heightened, he could feel there were 3 unwanted creatures that had been following him. He didn't know what were them, but his warriors would deal with them before they could follow him any further. Kill them. Torak mind, linked his warriors, gave them a green light to destroy their enemies. Equals. The car Jack was driving had just stopped when Raine saw a white wolf that she knew approaching her. Raine immediately opened the car door, smiled and giggled at the same time as she hugged Torak in his wolf form. There was no hesitation when she did that. The soft fur that touched her skin was so delightful. Raine hummed in contentment when she basked in his woodsy scent. In her arms, Raine could feel Torak gradually changed into his human form. The fur faded, and there were strong arms that hugged her instead. It felt so warm and safe with him. I really miss you, my beautiful angel, Torak whispered to her ears as he hugged her tightly and carefully. This was a long wait until he could get her into his arms again, and finally he got what his heart desired. Any consequences that he had to pay later would be worth it, especially when he killed the creatures that had followed him. It would go without saying that the creatures that had followed Torak were ordered by Andromalius. That fallen angel really didn't know when to stop. Since many decades ago, Torak had been avoiding to deal with any fallen angel or witches, as their temper and attitude truly annoyed him, just like Seraphina and Andromalius now. "Let me see you, my love." Torak loosened his arms around Raine's body as he cupped her face gently. Raine gave him a sheepish smile as she looked at him without blinking. She didn't know that she had missed him this much until Torak was standing before her eyes and within her arm's reach. She didn't want to let him go. Raine liked the way Torak held her carefully and the way he called her with lovely endearments, or the way he stared at her as if Raine was the only important thing in his eyes. And that was true, only she didn't dare to believe it yet. "My beautiful angel." Torak sighed contentedly. He kissed her forehead and her eyes. "Come." Torak grabbed Raine's hand and led her inside the car. He still needed to take precaution in case something unpredictable happened. Torak admitted that he was being selfish now, as he could risk his life and Raine's safety by seeing her like this, but he barely could hold back his beast from running amok as a result of being separated with his mate. Torak helped Raine to get in the car and closed the door behind him, leaving the two of them alone while Jack was nowhere to be seen. He knew better to spare himself from the sudden display of affection. Both of them were sitting on the back seat with Raine rested her head against Torak's chest, enjoying his strong heartbeat while Torak pulled her hairband and let her black jet hair fell on her back. Torak hummed in satisfaction when he felt her silky hair between his fingers. "What's Seraphina's plans for you, my love? How's she treated you these past days?" Torak asked with concern. He really needed to know what that witch had planned for his mate, as she could be a bit crazy with her envisaged. Raine started to talk about Seraphina's idea to call a tutor so she could attend the exam and finish her high school's year before she went to university and became freshman. Actually, Torak didn't really like the idea of Raine went to university. Seraphina could just let her attend online programs. It was more safe for her that way. But again, he didn't know what was running inside that witch's mind. Torak made a mental note about this. He would ask Raphael to do a background check upon the 3 universities, especially what kind of creature that was there. Raine didn't talk about the house score that Seraphina had tasked her to do, as she didn't want to make Torak angrier than this. His perfect eyebrows were knitted together, but she told him Seraphina's odd rule about not allowed to disturb her once a month. Torak nodded his head as if he understood something that Raine didn't know. Actually, there wasn't many things that she knew, but Torak didn't explain about it further and Raine didn't dare to ask. When the time comes, don't disturb her. Torak only reminded Raine that. His fingers traced her face from her eyebrows to her chin, stopped at her ears that Torak thought they were cute as Raine talked. He was fascinated by her, from the way she talked to the way she moved. He couldn't describe how much he loved her. With a small, simple smile from her, it could make his heart swell with happiness. Torak felt insane when he realized that the insanity which he welcomed. "I don't know that 4 days is what it takes to make you talk more to me." Torak teased her when Raine started to talk about Torak's project with the government. Realizing that she talked too much, Raine shut her mouth and stared at Torak timidly. She was also not aware about this. Did I offend him? Did I annoy him? Was he angry? Raine became conscious and wary, and Torak could see it in her eyes as he leaned closer. "I love to hear your voice, my love." He kissed her forehead and both her cheeks. The most beautiful sound that I ever heard. And that was all that Torak needed to say to make his mate happy again. Raine snuggled against his chest as she giggled. "You said this is not your territory, but why?" Raine's voice trailed off. Jack had explained it to her before, but apparently his words couldn't convince her, and she wanted to hear it from Torak directly. This time, her self-confidence wasn't the issue here, as this was a common insecurities and curiosity that any women would face if their men took an extreme step like what Torak did, and they became the reason of it. "Why establish a company here?" Torak picked up Raine's unfinished question. Raine nodded, hiding her face from him as she nuzzled his chest. This gesture alone could make Torak overjoyed. He loved when sometime Raine acted bashful like this, as it could only mean she wasn't afraid of him anymore. When the first time Torak met her, she got scared easily, not to mention to hug him with her own volition, like what she did now. Raine would cower away the moment Torak got close to her and too afraid to even see him in the eyes. Because I want to be as close as possible to you. Torak answered her truthfully. There was nothing he wanted to hide from her, not even his feeling, and he didn't need to feel embarrassed to say something like that. Torak said it with pride, because she was his pride.